Hello and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League. And if you need a comfortable seat to sit in, one that we as the casters get to sit in whenever we're watching the games that some of us even have at home, the players get to sit in here at the booths. And just if you want to get one of those for yourself, they're comfortable, obviously because we get to sit in them for so long and doing just fine. Go to needforseat.com. Get yourself a SMITE Maxonomic chair. Make sure to use code SMITEMAX to get yourself a nice little discount. Thank you to Maxonomic for being the share sponsor here for the SPL. And again, with those nice and comfortable seats. But let's go ahead and talk about our upcoming games that we got here today. We got to see a nice little matchup between the Oni Warriors and the Valhalla Valkyries to start us off. A nice little 3-game set. And now we're going to jump into our in-studio match. The Tartarus Titans and the Atlantis Leviathans playing up here next.
Yeah, this is our set of the week, man. I've got high expectations this one. I fully expected to go 3 games. This is going to be a very contentious game.
Games in the set.
You got three game set of games.
Oh, we got a potential prediction there. Best of maybe all 3 here. Undefeated Atlantis Leviathans here, 5-0. The Tartarus Titans right behind them, hot on their heels at 4-1. Both of them fighting for that potential first seed slot. The Atlantis Leviathans come out here today. Well, they got to hold on to that one. I don't think anybody will be able to take that one away. But the Tartarus Titans can play that spoiler and try and snag it away from a member. The top 2 seeds are the most important ones for all these teams because they want to be the ones to decide the group stages for the other teams. And man, if I'm the Leviathans and I get a win here, I'm just going to say it now. I'm putting the Kings in the other bracket because I don't want another potential 8-0 streak to be broken by that. I'm just saying that just for a nice little call here. But let's talk a little bit about the Atlantis Leviathans. They've been looking hot here in phase number 3. And right at the second week of play, that's when we got to see the change to the jungle. And it's allowed Panatom as an individual to really get to shine here for this team.
Yeah, the Atlantis Leviathans are in a unique position that every other team in the league is trying to hone in their consistency. The Atlantis Leviathans are not concerned about that. These guys are the epitome of consistency, and I think you're right to highlight Panatom out of the jungle. He has been a thorn in the side of every single team that they've played against. Early game aggression, late game scaling, it doesn't matter. This guy can do just about anything you want out of the jungle, and he's got some pretty spicy picks for it as well. The set recently has been very potent. Generally, these other teams taking set into the dual lane. I think they're wrong to do so. I'm a like mind with Panatom. I think that god is incredibly strong inside of the jungle, but it's not just set. You got things like the Susano that come to mind for him as well. The Wheelish has been getting some good value. It's just been consistent, man. And it's not just Panatom. I know we're having a little bit of fun, but the entirety of the Leviathans are a 5-headed threat, and it just feels like just about nobody knows how to deal with them.
I mean, it's so difficult to get into this back line. A lot of that thanks to the frontliners and Panatom for these strong initiations. He's still not afraid to even go back to some of those old school warriors. The Gilgamesh, even the Erlong Shen is still on the table for him. I mean, you even see him stealing away a Fire Giant there with 1 tick of Winds of Shamash. I mean, this player is more than willing to get his hands dirty. Those mid 2v2s have been so potent and so dangerous to go up against the Leviathans because of what Panatom was able to bring in that early game.
Yeah, I mean, he's just good. Full stop. He's just good. I'm going to full stop. Watch this. He's just good.
He's just good. Well, how good is he? Let's go ahead and throw it over to Dulcin. Maybe he can talk to the jungler and see just how good he really is.
That's right. Panatom standing by with me. Don't worry, production. I got it right this time. For the pregame interview, what's the word here, Panatom? The desk talked about it a little bit. Assassins have been all the rage here as of late with the mace tree being better. You still like some of the warrior style picks though? Do you think anything can work in the jungle right now?
Yeah, like right now I feel like even the mages are like so good, but all the maces are like so good. Yeah.
So anything maybe in the jungle. You guys are like you have 2 more sets, so you're a couple wins away from going undefeated the entire phase, beating every other team in the league. Is that something that weighs on you at all? Are you at all concerned about going undefeated, or are you 1 game at a time?
Yeah, it's like 1 game on a time, but obviously it will be like so cool to be like, I don't know, 14-0 or something.
That'd be awesome. Well, look, a team standing in the way of an undefeated phase is the Tartarus Titans. The last time you played them, the Titans were able to grab the win over you guys. Do you think anything has changed that gives you an edge over them this time?
I think like right now playing on the studio is just better for us.
Sure.
I don't know, just like the environment is just better on the studio, so
sure.
Maybe that.
We talked to Layers. Layers came into the green room when we were sitting. He said, all right, casters, how long do you want this set to be? I can make it happen, short, long, whatever you want. I think the consensus was that it would be a 2-0, one way or the other. Do you think 2-0 set or this one going all 3?
I'm agree that maybe it's just a 2-0.
2-0 one way or the other. I'll let you go get back with the team. Thanks for the time and best of luck.
Thank you so much. I think it's important there that he said the studio just feels different and feels better for this team, and I'm inclined to agree. The Atlantis Leviathans have been looking real strong in these land matchups against all the teams they've had the opportunity to face, and they've got 1 more here today up against the Tartarus Titans. specifically going up against his direct opposition in Layers on the side of the Tartarus Titans. These two kind of share similarities in their god pool, namely the Erlong Shen, I think might be something that we do get to see a little bit of hot contention over between both of those players.
I wish they talked to me, man. I called for 3 games. They were out here letting them know that 2 games are going to happen. Now I'm looking like a fool on the desk. Unfortunate, but you were right to highlight that these guys do have a little bit of carryover between the god pools, talking about Layers and Panatom, Erlang Shen being that standout as well. But there is a distinction in how they elect to play that god. When Panatom takes Erlang Shen, it's a little bit more so late game, or early game rather, slanted that Mannequin Scepter inside of the first slot, whereas recently Layers has shifted his attention a little bit more so towards that late game. Bumba's Spear seems to be the flavor of the week for him, and generally objective-focused gameplay, the ability to burn down Gold Furies, Pyromancers, and all these other things throughout the duration of the match seems to be the game plan. The Tartarus Titans certainly a squad that keep their eyes on those neutral objectives, but it's not just the Erlang Shen that's been looking good for Layers. Recently, this Camazotz has been a standout pick, and I'm going to take my shot now because Aggro's been out for the entirety of the week.
Okay.
He says Camazotz not that good. I'm going to go ahead and say
disagree.
Disagree. That god does a ton of damage, has a ridiculous amount of survivability. The dive potential is crazy, and when you're piloting at the level that Layers has been recently, you're probably going to look just fine.
Yeah, I mean, where the Warriors kind of overlap between these two players here, Layers has really had some standouts on the Assassins, namely that Camazotz. You're completely right to highlight. I mean, this is a god that in the Phase 2 playoffs, he was just W King at the enemy team, and that was even before all the buffs to the jungle items. Now it's only made Camazotz even better, and Layers has been able to make it work just as well, maybe if not even better here. In their matchup against the Atlantis Leviathans here in the studio, it's going to be a big one. I think Dave was right to highlight the last time they faced off, it was the Tartarus Titans who came out on top, but they weren't in the studio for that matchup. The Leviathans have had a lot of success here in the studios. Even the Titans have had some pretty strong matchups in this studio match specifically. I'm curious to see how these two are going to pan out. And sometimes we even see some differences, like slight altercations in the meta just from these studio matches.
Yeah, everyone develops a different way of playing. There's a distinction inside of the Pro League itself at the pro level of players that are much better during the regular phase and players that really step up at LAN, become those Lanimals, and I think both of these squads have got a fair deal of both. I know that Layers in particular on the Tartarus Titans loves the LAN environment. That guy feeds off the energy. You can see him when he comes in. He's incredibly happy, but I think the entirety of the Leviathans find themselves in that similar position. But historically, the Leviathans, be it Sanguine or the Leviathans now, have had a little bit of struggles in these late LAN phase matches. It was the playoffs rematch that we're going to get to watch earlier today, or a little bit after this, after P's and B's. It was the Tartarus Titans that came out ahead last time around, so I'm excited to see how this one pans out.
Well, let's delay no longer to get towards that game. Picks and bans, game number 1, ready to go between the teams. It will be the Tartarus Titans taking that first pick, a spot that these guys really have loved to be in the last couple of matches they played. I want to say against the Jade Dragons, this was the point that they wanted to be more often than not. 3 bans a pop. You only get 1 pick here in that first slot, so Leviathans have a lot of potential to take some counterplay away from the Tartarus Titans. And one god that hasn't changed as far as being a first ban these last couple of weeks, Uller, does make his way on that first ban spot by the Tartarus Titans. And Odin, absolutely no surprise seeing the performance out of this solo laner. He'll be taken out by the Leviathans.
Panatom talked about how strong that new mace tree is, and Ull, one of the hunters that utilizes it to the best of its capacity, is going to be removed here by the Titans. And then I'm expecting some largely standard bans afterward. Yamoja, going to be the first Guardian overall. I was expecting this one, the Ardio, on the other side to be something we see a little bit earlier. Now, you got to have that conversation around the new guard supports. Geb, Khepri, and Sylvanas has been highly contentious picks within the league recently, and as it stands, you can only ban out 2 of the 3, so maybe the Titans find themselves in a position where they can go ahead and strip away whatever it is they like, but instead it's the Terra taken off the table.
Yeah, rounding up with that new guard, Terra has also been kind of sneaking up into these high priority picks and bans for these Guardian roles. Now with only 1 ban left, Khepri, Geb, Sylvanas all still up. It's going to be which one gets taken out. The answer is none of them. All 3 those Guardians available to these teams. It's a Morrigan ban here by Leviathans for their 3rd and final one. Tartarus Titans have first pick. More often than not, we've been seeing them go for the Khepri. Aurora's really been loving this god, but now with the Geb and the Sylvanas kind of rising up here, we do see a little bit of that shift up here. Geb locked in for the Titans support.
Of the new Guardians, or well, new air quotes, I think that Geb probably is my favorite pick of the three. It's just Stone Shield, so consistent. You're going to find value on it regardless, whereas Scarab's Blessing, you're kind of only using it right at the tail end of a fight. You're only using it to revive your allies. Instead, Stone Shield can afford you multiple secondary chances inside of these engagements, and then the buff to Cataclysm obviously has been very nice for this god. The damage output that he brings inside of the late game is actually crazy. Doesn't have much scaling, but you don't need it. You're just dealing decent damage from the base kit.
We'll go ahead and just briefly note here the Nike pickup by the Leviathans, a near 70% win rate on this god with its 15 or 16 games played. Most likely going to be running out of the solo lane and a Sylvanas. So of the three Guardians that were up between the Khepri, Geb, Sylvanas, it's a question of which ones get grabbed. Titans prioritize the Geb. Leviathans want the Sylvanas, and no surprise, Wrong U has had some strong success on this god in particular. Seeing that locked in gets a nice little punch here for the dual lane, gives him a nice little bit of early pressure. The question now is, where will the Titans go with their next two picks? And do we see the, I was literally about to say, do we see the set picked up by the Titans to go in that dual lane decouple along with the Geb? Well, the answer may just be yes.
I know that the Titans are more likely to take that set into the dual lane, but we'd be doing a disservice if we don't bring up the fact that it can be flexed into the jungle. I am surprised to see the Leviathans take Sylvanas so high up in the draft. I'd expected to see it in the first three, but third overall, considering that the Titans already have Geb. It's very unlikely that they're taking that double Guardian or double standard defensive Guardian route. Instead, it is going to be the Cthulhu locked in third overall for the Titans, more than likely headed for the soul lane. So the Leviathans, to me, say, all right, let's take Sylvanas here. Let's wait it out. Let's make sure our carries see a little bit more of the Titans draft so they can feel comfortable with their selection.
Yeah, very stark front line here, though, for the Tartarus Titans between Geb and Cthulhu. A lot of sustain and a lot of shielding that you can get out there just to keep your team up alive. It's a Raijin as a response for the Leviathans, so they get their mid lane selection in early before these bans come by. And now with their choice of bans, the Tiamat will be the first one. So we get the quote-unquote top two mages taken out almost right away. But we've been seeing Paul kind of stray away from these two gods as of recent. Soul, Aphrodite have been some of the gods he's been flexing over towards a little bit more.
Man, now that you said Afro, this is looking like a composition that could really utilize that healing on the side of the Tartarus Titans, and seems like the Titans are saying, hey, that Nike, not going for the jungle. We know that that has some flex potential, but instead it is a Susano ban from the Tartarus Titans saying, all right, that's probably going to be headed for the soul lane, so Cthulhu versus Nike seems to be the matchup that the Titans are hedging their bets on, and it's going to be Hunbots rounding out the bans here for the Tartarus Titans. So across the board, Tiamat, Erlang, Shen in the second phase from the Leviathans, Susano, Hunbots from the Tartarus Titans this time around. So all these guys going to go a little bit deeper in the god pool and then put in these positions. Generally, I'd expect maybe a Heimdall pick for Zatman, but instead it's the Hachiman, bringing similar levels of safety and, well, maybe a similar level of aggression as well, especially considering what we saw from Vote in the last set.
Look, man, it's not game three. Zatman can't break out the old reliable just yet. He's got to wait a little bit longer before we get there. Instead, it will be Hachiman, who's been rising up right there next to Ullr, a god that you don't really expect it too often coming out of here just as of recent times, but this Hachiman also pumping up there with a 70% plus win rate on this Hunter, so it's been surprising to see just how successful he has been. But so many teams have been prioritizing him. We've been seeing him game after game after game, and I was kind of hoping that after I said the Aphrodite, we wouldn't actually see it, but no. We're not gonna be afforded the luxury of not seeing the Aphrodite. We'll be locked in here right next to that Camazotz that Layers has been having such strong performances on.
Hey, I'm happy to see Aphrodite. Not that I love the healer playstyle, but it's more so now the Leviathans can show us if they've got an idea of how to deal with some of these healers, because I've been getting slammed inside of my own personal games. I want to figure out how to deal with Aphrodite in her own right, but let's talk about how well she synergizes with this Tartarus Titans draft. You connect up with Set. Okay, dash in with the ultimate. You're already a chainsaw in the back line. Well, all of a sudden you've got Undying Love to your favor. Back off to apply a secondary slow after Skewer. Also, all that healing that can ring its way true. Camazotz should be allowed to act as a solo agent. More often than not, likely not going to be attached to the Aphrodite, barring the early game, when generally he is your best target. But inside the late, it's going to be Camazotz acting as that solo agent, trying to find his way into the back line, shutting down the likes of either Hachiman or Raijin, and utilizing his own ultimate for safety.
A rather tanky squad picked up here by the Leviathans to try and respond to this Geb Cthulhu that got picked up by the Tartarus Titans as a Gilgamesh 10th pick to kind of round it out. So we are still seeing a little bit of air of these warrior jungles outside of just the Erlang Shen. Gilgamesh hasn't quite gone away just yet. It feels that Panatom is one of the few that is still bringing this god back out. It's had some strong performances on it in the past, and in this new meta hasn't had a whole lot of time in the light for this god anymore. It's been mostly just those assassins. Curious how this one will work out here up against this Aphrodite. You got to have some way to try and bait that out at that Undying Love. You think this Gilgamesh might be the god to do so?
Gilgamesh in the early game is going to have a pretty good odd, right? I mean, you drop kick someone to the wall. It's one of the longer single target stuns you can have out of the assassin role. But late game, man, Gilgamesh going to struggle up against the likes of Aphrodite, maybe more so. Just worried about controlling space in the team fight with his ultimate.
It's game number 1 here of our in-studio set of the day and our match of the week from the Titans and the Leviathans. Who's going to pick it out in game 1? Let's take it over to Dave and Gore.
We go again. The Titans and the Leviathans fighting it out for the first time this phase. And Gore, the last time this phase. They're live in studio here. And the Tartarus Titans looking to hand the Atlantis Leviathans their first loss of the phase. Basically, Billy, he's going to be working the spectator for us here this set. And Gore, I think high expectations for these two teams to put on a show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this evolves. Zatman on something a little more standard that we've seen lately on the Hachiman. Not necessarily too surprising there, but the set, something that has been very kind to a lot of junglers, Panatom being one of them, but also Cyclone Spin over the last couple of days. So you have to keep your eye on the duo lane as they transition into the late game. He's got an Aphrodite to help pocket him, plus a Geb to help shield him. Feels like, damn, man, a Cthulhu to really be your frontline? Feels like it's going to be hard to kill off this assassin more than anything.
And to be clear, I want to make sure that I preface this. This is not a slight against the Titans, but it's what comes to mind when I think of the comps they've run the last couple days. It is just annoying. I mean, whether you're drafting Morgan Cthulhu for two of them in the team fights, or you're drafting Cthulhu and an Aphrodite, or you're drafting a Nike with Bulwark and Geb shielding and an Aphrodite in that game as well. I mean, this Titans team, they've just made life so easy for their front lines to impact the game and later on team fights, and so difficult for the Leviathans and the Titans opponents in general to team fight effectively. And all the things I listed are present here in this game, minus the Morgan. It seems like even if you don't get the Morgan, you get the Aphrodite, and that's just fine. Like, that's the pivot point here for the Titans. If one or the other is available, you can still draft a Geb, you can still draft a Cthulhu, and make life miserable for the Leviathan.
The downside is like, Paul does really well. Actually, Cyclone Spin gets pulled.
He gets pulled in, rooted in place. That man dashes forward, got the stun, got first blood. Strong front line might not matter if the back line is melting, and Paul is melting in the mid lane as well. Layers rotates through to mid, applies the DOT to Panatom, and grabs the kill.
And then zones out, allows Paul to come right back into the lane. He's going to be able to survive, barely, but he is alive. Paul was flirting with death as of right there. I was going to say the problem for Paul is realistically that you are in this position and have been in this position for what feels like 2 years now, maybe longer. Carry mages are kind of the thing I expect out of him. Doesn't mean he has a bad Aphrodite, but it does mean that when I am looking at Paul, I am thinking of what is he going to get the most impact out of. And Aphrodite can have a large impact, but it's not necessarily going to be as visibly felt. You're going to see it through the healing numbers and things like that, not through the kill count, unless he just pops off for whatever reason. Sometimes Aphro does that, but it's not too often.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll have to keep our eyes on Paul.
You can't scoff at like a
back
get
off
back,
does
back
like
off,
really good damage.
Call it get back. I guess
And
the same idea.
I'm gonna be a little spoiler.
Oh,
Birds can hurt too. Those
You-
things will
Aphrodite's
like,
birds.
Yeah, Aphrodite's birds.
Maybe
And real birds, probably.
real birds probably
I'm
can as
assuming
well.
if you were getting attacked by lovebirds, you would be upset. And it doesn't seem like too much, right? 55 damage per tick, 15% of your magical power. But with a good build late game on a carry, like, I mean, Zatman or Shinto, they're going to feel that. It's going to be, rough, like maybe 20% of your HP if it gets a good hit, depending on the build that Paul goes. The more defense that Paul has, the less damage it will likely do. But it still hurt.
Still does hurt, and still does have high potential here for the Titans and Paul as well. Worth talking about the Leviathans draft, though. Panatom is here on right as the Gilgamesh makes his way on behind. Bede's still there for Cyclone Spin, some extra mobility there as well. And
Ooh, what a
Panatom did
blink.
not want Cyclone Spin at all. There's a pull onto Cyclone Spin at the end here. But Cyclone won't be under any further pressure. Layers is rotated here to left, and Cyclone Spin pressing the go button, chasing down Zatman. Wrong you. Tries to toss an auto or two in there. Oh, Panatom is deleted, and Cyclone Spin will live on. Zatman has no ultimate, has no chance to live unless Layers gets pulled away by Wrong You, who saves his hunter's life.
Yeah, that is such a good pull from Wrong You. They do have sustain, and if they pick up this Scorpion, they'll have a little bit more going for him as well. So Zap not going to be too troubled. Although Layers is still here. He's not messing around. He's not going to get the kills, not going to get the slows, but he is making sure to put the fear of Kamazots in them. and make sure that they play a little more cautiously. That's just an unfortunate gank scenario from Panatom. Not only, first off, does Layers come over and do it a little bit better, but you get a good blink from Aurora to dodge out the drop kick. You had mentioned it, but there were the beads originally available there for Cyclone Spin, so even if you get the drop kick on the set, he's probably just going to be able to walk away. And then, yes, there's some good CC turnarounds, it looks like, feels like for the Leviathans. But Panatom just drops too fast, and Layers is able to scoop up another kill.
Well, Shinto out of the mid lane, Gores, where my eyes start to go towards. We talked a little bit about Paul. Charon's coin start here for the Raijin. Has been on a lot of mages, Gord. Chronos Pendant into Soul Gem into Soul Reaver is kind of the first three. Maybe a Weave Divine Ruin in there. I imagine that's something Shinto's going to want to have in his kit at some point. But the Chronos, or the Charon's coin rather, to start off this game, you get some of that percent pen online early. Maybe having that will immediately help with some of the frontline woes that you're going to be facing.
Well, you already know that Geb pretty soon is going to start showing up in your lane. You also are more than likely able to make the guess that Afro will pick up something, whether it's a Breastplate of Valor, just to have a little bit of cooldown as well. But no matter what, there's going to be a defense item soon for Paul. Might not be the next one, might be the third item. Either way, it's going to be impactful. So knowing that you want a little bit of pin to help eat through those prots, plus you know that you're dealing with this Camazotz, something that's already troublesome, I like it. Plus you have to think about the fact that Shinto has had such a wide range of success on this god in the past. And while it's not as undefeated as it once was,
And
it's still
was
a nuts
undefeated for a while.
Yeah, it's a nuts win rate for Shinto on Raijin. And so that's something that I think, you know, has merit. Not just because of the fact that he's playing it well, but they're winning with it.
Well, if you can keep the Cthulhu behind, you're going to be feeling good. Panatom on over to the right side of the map. Gets the ultimate out of Benji, so that at least is a slight feel good here. What doesn't feel great is that Rongyu and Zapman are effectively being 2v1'd by Cyclone Spin right now. Ultimate out of both Zapman and Rongyu. Cyclone Spin is just something else on this set. I mean, when the viability of set ADC was an option, Cyclone feels like one of the first ones to have picked it up, and he looks very, very good on this pick. Little trades like that, Zapman and Rongyu have sustain to top their health bars back off. But that shows you the current power position of Cyclone Spin here. Layers lurking on left, but outside of some assistance from Aurora, it might be risky to go in.
Yeah, I really like, as well, the double assassin comp. Like, look at the way this team fight is going to shake out. Right now, we're 7 minutes in. There's not been a whole ton of groupings, and there shouldn't be for another few more minutes. But when you group up for a 5-on-5, you've got a Geb Cataclysm plus the shielding that you're going to have to worry about. Cthulhu to create a zone and get a lot of knockups. Then you have two assassins that are not only capable of diving the backline, one is very adept at getting himself out in the Camazotz, but you also have an Aphrodite to link up to them and the Geb shield for the other one that is going to allow them to get in there, get something done, survive the skirmish, and get out alive using Undying Love if necessary, the birds for sure. Plus, we had talked about it a little bit earlier, but you factor in some back-off damage, it makes it a lot easier to be an assassin.
Be careful, Zapman. Cyclone Spin does some damage. Beads out of the Hachiman. And that is simply Cyclone Spin walking forward. That sent Zapman right on back. And remember, 10 seconds ago, as we were talking about this set, Zapman and Rongyu kind of got 2v1'd a bit by Cyclone Spin. So if Zapman is left alone in this lane, Gore, it's such a unique thing where, you know, normally you get to the point in the game where the supports, they all rotate out, and then you're left with Hunter versus Hunter, you know, range damage, you know, both have gap close, both have disengage, whatever. You don't often see these big brawly 1v1s. The set just kind of changes the face of that lane. I mean, you get left alone with a set, and you're just dueling an assassin in your lane. Cyclone Spin can continue to push this lead.
Yeah, and honestly, I like the way that he's been playing it, right? Getting aggressive, forcing Zapman to feel uncomfortable with the beads down. It opens up a lot of opportunities for Cyclone Spin, but for Aurora, for Layers, help for Paul if he decides to make a rotation over there. There's a lot of conversations that the Titans can have about the duo lane. And that makes it easier. I mean, Nike's not the easiest god to gank, but neither is Cthulhu. So I don't expect to see a lot of Hardcore and Benji till team fights, period.
Yeah,
I just don't know that they're going to be able to do much here.
Does sound about right. Aurora has been kind of hanging out over here on the left, but haven't seen much. That said, I'd say playing with this lead, I more mean pressure in the lane for Cyclone Spin. Zapman has been able to maintain level parity here on left. I think we're talking about the Hachiman here, Gore, because as the Hunter meta has changed around a little bit, we've started to see a couple others rise to the forefront of that conversation. Hachiman is definitely one of them. I suppose the Hunters that can make use of the Crusher, of that ability tree, maybe starting to see a little bit more play.
Yeah, we've seen a lot more. Actually, a little bizarre as of right now that we only have one Crusher that's online compared to what we've seen, and that's on Zapman. But the Brawlers make sense very early on from Panatom. Shinto as well has gone into the Divine Ruin. You had mentioned the anti-heal earlier. With the rise of these assassins, well, it's creating difficult matchups for a lot of these carries.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned, I mean, Zapman, he's got the technical lead because he's 1-0, but he has spent a lot of time being very wary of Cyclone Spin, plus with the ult, everything that Cyclone as set can bring. Changes up a lot of the dynamic of this duo lane.
The real Zapman lead, Gore, is being behind, though. I think that's what we've learned by
Yeah,
watching.
the truest Zapman lead is
right,
I've been 4-man ganked
Right.
for some reason 3 times.
Right, if
I'm
he's
2 to 4
0-4.
levels down.
Right. When Zapman's 0-4, that's right where he wants the opposing team to be. So right now, but by all metrics except for the fact that it's Zapman is ahead.
Zapman beaten and bloody, black eye, things like that. I got him right where I want him.
Right, remember where he came from, the people who trained him to get himself there. Hey, speaking of gank, it's happening to Zapman here. He's going to get jumped on by Layers, galloping away, and the horse won't be quick enough. Layers jumps in, gets the kill, and right as we speak about it, Zapman suffers an unfortunate fate. And Gore, that's not even all that difficult for Layers. Zapman was just all the way down the lane.
Yeah, that one was about as easy as a gank could get. He gets that kill. Almost loses his life, though, Layers does, to a good rotation from Panatom, but no backup to really help with that versus a Roar showing up pretty soon after. Yeah, not a fight that you want to be taking too long if you're the jungler for the Leviathans. For Layers, I mean, that is, like you said, about as tried and true as it gets.
Panatom, Rongyu, and Shinto collapsed on by the Tartarus Titans. Undying Love is perfect from Paul, and that'll keep Layers on the map, but Paul's the one who ends up getting the last bit of damage. The Titans grouping up on left, putting all this pressure on this side of the map, and really calling the Leviathans on their attempted pressure, and able to grab one more, and it's Rongyu who falls for the first time.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Is that knockup
How do you know
in
that?
and of itself enough to get Rongyu out of there? Probably not. But is it way better to watch Paul get a really cool preemptive ult and dodge out Rongyu's ult?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And of course it makes it more worthwhile, especially if they're able to pick up a Gold Fury to boot. I mean, this has been really good control. And you have to remember, the last time these teams went up against each other was the finals of the Phase 2 playoffs, right? So it's been a little while since we've seen them match up, but it is one that favored the Titans at the time. And it doesn't seem like they've changed too much about it. Although, Dave, it's really interesting to note how far ahead the Leviathans were,
yeah.
despite the fact that they haven't been, quote-unquote, winning a lot of these, at least skirmishes, little matchups.
Yeah, it was, what, a 1.5k or so gold lead that's now back down to 0 after the Gold Fury. We are dead even. 12.5 minutes into this game, despite a lot of early pressure from the Titans, the Leviathans were able to weather that storm. A slight lead in the mid lane even for Shinto, 1 level over Paul. He's been able just to hang out in that lane, farm on up. There's no surprise that Shinto's been getting a lot of farm funneled to himself here for the Atlantis Leviathans. Over in the solo lane core, pretty interesting matchup. Probably not in the lane itself. I doubt there's all that much intrigue going on between a Cthulhu and a Nike. But 2 solo laners that are really going to be trying to operate in these fights in similar ways. You know, Yarkor, he's going to want to jump as far into the back line as he can, and Benji's going to want to do it the same way, just walking forward. And so I think a fun chess match will be had in these team fights between Benji and Yarkor, and who's more effective at making the back line uncomfortable.
And honestly, look, any team with 2 assassins is going to make the backline very uncomfortable.
Even outside of Benji, right?
The good news is that the Leviathans kind of thrive in the chaos. I mean, you go back and you kill Zap, Shinto usually picks up 3 or 4 kills in a fight somehow, and vice versa. Shinto, if you go and focus him, Zapman's the one who's picking up those kills. It just seems to be this weird late-game passive the Leviathans have. The 2 of them together are just adept in these team fights. And
Yeah,
I don't know what is
Leviathans
the
passive.
they're
they
like
they get a boost when one of the two carries is dead.
their souls are linked, but so that only one of them can ever find success. It's kind of like the movie Hancock with Will Smith, right?
Yeah.
Like when they're near each other, their powers start to fade, and they're like fatally,
Right.
and so they have to just stay as far apart as possible to be superheroes. That's Zatman and Shinto.
Right, it's like an evolved form of the Zatman passive, where at full strength somehow the team is at its weakest, but when you lose someone, you go off, whether it's Zatman or Shinto. That's a good pull from Rongyu onto Aurora. Luckily, Aurora is tanky enough that there won't be that much pressure on the end of it. Look at that onto Shinto. Lovebirds ticking him on away, and some damage from Layers on the other end of it as well. And so that's a pretty good glimpse early on here, Gore, what the power of Layers with Jotun's Brawlers and Tier 1 and Mace, and Paul with Chronos Pendant and Lotus Crown. And then one tier of the book in the back pocket, how much damage Shinto will take. Pyromancer started by the Titans. It's
What
a
a
pull
pull.
from Rongyu onto Layers, but Paul reads it well again. Undying Love is down. That's a good Winds of Shamash from Panatom, who will jump on in. Paul uses the Aegis, swooping is Layers, and some damage from Zatman has found its way into the back. Is Benji, and Cyclone Spin has been able to chase down one, but oh, the Cthulhu Gore is being whittled away.
It's just making space, though. Look at this. Benji's
Oh,
not worried
Zatman.
about his health bar. They're catching people out.
Oh, now it's time for the Leviathans to turn it around because Zatman has died. Unfortunately, Shinto has not been able to find the effectiveness after his counterpart has fallen. That's a 2-for-none trade. The Titans out ahead, just a bit disjointed from the Leviathans.
And a little disjointed there, even to continue with the damage chase up follow through. This doesn't seem to be all on the exact same page. Benji got out with no health, and that doesn't matter because he still lived. That's at the end of the day, there's his goose egg under his death column, and he's feeling happy about it. I think the way they played that is the worries that you should have if you are a Leviathans fan right now. That is the game plan through and through for the Titans.
Yep.
Hey, I'm going to keep an assassin alive if I'm Paul. I've got multiple ways to do it. And then we're going to Geb ult, we're going to Cthulhu ult, and we're going to chase you down, and someone's going to get those kills. Despite the early gank, the one kill the Leviathans have been able to pick up, nothing about what they have outside of just their map pressure has felt like it's going their way.
Agreed. And the Titans have been able to convert into a pretty dominating spot now. So, Primal Fury will be up here shortly. You imagine you start to see a rotation there towards the left side of the map. There is a Fire Giant standing on right, and we've kind of slowly, Gore, gotten our way into that conversation about the FG. Still, maybe a little bit more time before that objective ends up getting pulled. But if the Titans are able to find a convincing enough fight, maybe around the Gold Fury, oof, that's close from Rongyu. I don't think Lair suspected that.
I feel like
From
the
around the corner.
Kamazot's claw felt the vines go nearby. Like
That's
he felt
right.
the wind off him at the minimum.
That would be nice. There's like some haptic feedback, like your mouse.
I'd love that.
your
That's
mouse,
that's the
like,
era of
vibrates.
gaming I'm waiting for.
That's right. One of these days, Gore. Shinto forced into the Taiko drums after the Cataclysm from Aurora. Gets used there in the mid lane. Paul had the link up with Aurora, so if there was any danger onto the Geb, an Undying Love would have been there to save his life. But you're able to make Shinto a little uncomfortable and get yourself some pressure to go to the Fury.
And this has been, I mean, just so controlling from them. Neutral objectives, this is the third one in a row unanswered by the Leviathans. I mean, their best case scenario right now, they're grouping up on right. I thought that they would maybe run for a Fire Giant, but they're just trying to fight Benji.
Agreed. I thought it could have been an FG call, but instead, I don't know, the objective size may be equally as big, but Benji has taken barely any damage. Descend into Madness is a big ultimate Gore to have missing.
That's the biggest deal, I think, not having that for a team fight. Now you can start to do a Fire Giant dance, and you've stripped away one of the biggest tools that the Titans have. But Cyclone Spin's still Cyclone Spin. Layers has his ult as well. There's a lot of chase potential for the Titans, although the Leviathans have done a great job of just separating themselves. Full-on retreat. They got forward. They got the ult. That's what I think they wanted. And now they have, admittedly, not a long time, but at least some time to work with, where you're just not going to have this oppressive Cthulhu presence during a team fight.
Well, this is nice from Zatman, Gore. Look how this split push has kind of helped out the Leviathans. You're able to get a tier 1 tower on left. You get yourself some farm. And important for Zatman to get that farm. He is 2 levels down to Cyclone Spin right now. I don't think there's any world where he's able to find the same impact as Cyclone Spin, who is just walking down the Leviathans. And so that's probably the best Zatman can do. You push down left, you get a tower, you get some farm, you get some time free farming up. Because 2 levels has just become 3 levels. And it looks like Cyclone Spin will be the first one to hit level 20, Gore, maybe shy of 20 minutes. A breakneck pace for Cyclone Spin and the Tartarus Titans.
And he's been doing a good job with these rotations. That's the other big thing. Set admittedly, I'm not looking at him like, oh, he's so fast, he can run so far. He's just been in these fights a lot more. Cyclone Spin is making these rotations like you had highlighted. Zapman needs a little bit of farm to try and match it. And so when Zap joins in at the same level, maybe the same pace, we might start to see a little bit of a difference, but it's going to be, subtle damage from the back line. It's going to have to be him and Shinto finding a couple of those shots, not the, hey, Zapman, what he did in the first couple of fights, where he dashed forward for the stun and things like that.
Yep.
He's going to have to be a lot more cautious. Cyclone Spin is going to be diving deep. Same thing for Layers. Layers is doing well off in his build as of right now. And again, you look at Camazotz as survivability just in general. The fact that he's gone 3 maces already, and he's got Aphrodite that's going to be backing him, that's just a nightmare fuel. I mean, Layers on Camazotz is just so good.
It is. It's a great combo.
so much to try and handle. And now they've just given him more tools to look better.
Yeah. Paul has been linked with him a good bit. I wondered, and I was waiting to see what Benji bought on his back there. So, went into the tier 1, a cloak or something like that. Went into the tier 1 cloak there. Pivots off of it. Zapman just has the Wind Demon finished off. But Gore, that is enough crit to have Benji feeling like, all right, I'm getting value out of this Spectral Armor. Because you got Thorns, a massive Cthulhu.
Yep.
You're going to have healing and a link from Paul. I mean, you're covering all your bases, it feels like, if you're Benji. Taking one more facet of the game away from the Atlantis Leviathans. It seems like we're barreling towards one fight that just kind of decides this game, and the Titans are going to push the envelope just a little bit further. As the Fire Giant gets started up, and it's a big knockup from Rongyu onto 3 members of the Tartarus Titans. Taiko drums out from Shinto, but doesn't connect for much damage. Benji kind of bouncing back and forth, all kind of separated here in this fight before the Titans regroup, head back to FG.
The Titans get all of that without using a single ult, without having to use a single relic. They are in a just far off better position now than the Leviathans, who had to use at least two big ults and one of their relics.
Winds of Shamash will not be enough to steal it away. Nice attempt from Panatom. For the Tartarus Titans feeling just fine around the Fire Giant. Knockback, Cataclysm, knock-up, all of it landing on a Yarkor. How about the Sentinel of Zeus? Will that keep you on the map? Yes, for a little bit longer. Benji's going to be chasing you down. And Yarkor's done enough to survive, but that's about all the Leviathans have done is survive.
Zapman's doing the good old Leviathan trade, though. They lose FG. He gets a tier 2 tower on left, so he exposes the Phoenix, and it keeps things a little more in their favor. That being said, there's 6 towers, were 6 towers standing for the Leviathans. That's a lot of gold that the Titans are going to be able to pick up. Plus, you had mentioned it, and talking about Benji's build and, going back to that conversation, you can see it in this. First off, he hasn't even had to ult yet. He hasn't had to use the Thorns. He hasn't been in trouble for a majority of this fight. And his one job is to survive and be a pain. I mean, he's going to be knockups, it's going to be controls, it's going to be these ults, and his build does that. His ult being available makes it so that soon enough, that's a great Phoenix siege, tier 2 tower siege, depending on where the Leviathans put up a defense.
That man's been caught out here by Cyclone Spin. He's going to have to use the ultimate, and he will gallop away. But is the re-engage there from Cyclone? Oh! Nearly gets the kill. Zapman has got nearly no HP, but Cyclone Spin is going to get out alive. Shinto suffers a similar fate in the mid lane, but he actually dies. Paul will snag one under the Leviathan's mid laner.
And Benji's ult being down theoretically should be a good thing overall for the Leviathans, but now you're fighting a 4v5, and Cthulhu's still Cthulhu, and Benji's just going to lead the way.
Man, the Tartarus...
Oh, what a cataclysm!
They have spent a lot of time farming up, but now the gas pedal is pressed. Rongyu with a big ultimate. But I'm not sure it changes all that much here, Goremizer. Phoenix gets taken down by the Titans. There's a slight outward rotation to maybe go back to the mid lane, but the Titans, they realize that they can end this game. They can put the Leviathans on the back foot. Hardcore will use his ultimate to slow things down here for just a moment. Panatom does the same, but Cyclone Spin's got an opening, and he's into the back line. Some good CC from Panatom. Connects onto the set, and the Titans have not spent a lot of time working down the health bar of the Leviathan's Titan.
And now they're going to have to fall back. Cyclone's low. Layers, while being sustained, is not in a comfortable position with the relics that have been burned. I think this is a good call. Shinto just now respawns. It took him a little longer. Having to force the fight, the Leviathans do a great job slowing them down. You called it with the Winds of Shamash, as well as Hardcore throwing out the Sentinel of Zeus. Just keeps them just far enough away from the Titan, just distracted enough that they're not going to be able to get the last few, well, I guess half health bar that they needed in order to get that. Bad news is there's still a Pyromancer Fury minute over on the Fire Giant,
Yep.
plus 2 towers. There's technically a Draugr if you want to go for it. A lot of options still for the Titans to further their lead.
The good news is
You're not out of the game.
you're not out of the game, and Zapman is real close to activating that passive. One more death. It was the fourth.
In fact, you know what? Just go feed right now. Get
That's right.
it
Run
out of the
it
way.
down, get it out of the way. What could happen if he overextended even slightly, Zapman. Benji was there waiting. The rest of the Titans
This might
around.
still be an
The Gold
overextension.
Fury actually still could be, just existing on this side of the map. Dashes away is Zapman. Does not have beats. Does have ultimate. Aurora rolling through. Cyclone Spin. That is absurd how much damage you get done. He won't make a mistake of it this time, and Zapman's passive is activated.
We'll have to see if it makes a difference here. Fire minions in mid is going to be causing a little bit of trouble. Pyromancer goes the way of the Leviathans, though. So still fighting back just enough in terms of gold. And they're going to need it because they lost all 6 of their towers in this Fire Giant. Another Phoenix being taken down or potentially taken down by the Titans. They don't have a lot of time to work with for the FG buff, but they do have a lot to work with in the sense that Zapman's not here and Panatom's still over there on right. They've got plenty of wiggle room.
Yeah, Zapman is going to make something happen. He might just be alone if the rest of his team dies under the left side. Phoenix Hardcore starts things off with his ultimate here. Dropkick from Panatom. It's good. It's on to Layers, who will have to leap away. Winds of Shamash in for the follow-up as well. This is maybe the best play we've seen from the Leviathans. They have separated out the Titans, but Cyclone Spin from range will put down one. Aurora does end up falling on the back end, and it's Wrongu who snags it, but Cyclone Spin's still alive. Cyclone Spin's a threat. Cyclone Spin's got 2, a third around the corner. And Cyclone Spin ends this game with a triple.
And depending on how things go, I mean, Zapman just now respawns, Hardcore is there, you might be able to find more.
All right, Zapman, time to activate that passive. Cyclone Spin down. It's Yarkor who gets it. And the Tartarus Titans core, they are leaving the base for the time being, but Hardcore stuck in place, jumps onto Benji, and Zapman at full HP, still a big threat. The Titans have not left the base. In fact, they are
Fire
still on
minions.
the Titan. Paul has got a lot of healing in onto Layers, and the Tartarus Titans, they play on thin margins. They get the win nonetheless.
That one honestly feels a little cut and dry. You get really good ganks early on from Layers that transition into really good 3-on-3. You have an Aphrodite and good assassin play into really good team fights with Benji really leading the way. The Leviathans didn't. They got a good kill onto Cyclone Spin early on, and then it took a while before we saw anything else from them.
Zapman just needed a little more time.
Yeah.
He spawned, just didn't have enough time and space to get that passive fully wound up. I said it needs more time. That was a quick game that felt a little longer just because of the pacing, like slow in the kills department, but the Titans felt like they controlled this one from start to finish. Tartarus Titans, they talked about it 2-0, and well, they're halfway there. Game 1 to the Titans, game 2 right after this.
Can see clear through the smoke you created. I feel my feet on the ground and they're shaking. How am I supposed to save the situation? Why the steps getting wasted even though we feel the same? Would you hug me in the dark? Let the worries go away. Would you do it all again? Do it all again? Would you leave your finger marks on my body while it sways? Would you light my way, find my way home again? My home you do it all again, do it all again? Would you leave your finger marks on my body while it sweats? Would you let my way, find my way home again? My home is you. 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 My home is you.
Just please give me a call. Bye.
I'd be stuck in my head. Think I need to escape. Feels like I'm waiting.
Game number 1 of our set is all wrapped up, and one thing that you can wrap yourself in is a nice pair of joggers. Thanks to our thanks to our sponsors over at Insight Apparel. You can go to shop.smiteproleague.com and pick yourself up a nice pair of joggers, a mouse pad, or anything else that we have to offer over at our Insight Apparel store. Shop.smiteproleague.com. One more time. If you need the website, it's also going to be right there on the screen. Make sure to go by, pick yourself up a set of joggers, pick up a mouse pad, pick up anything that you want to support your favorite team and to support the SPL. Thank you again to Inside Apparel for being the merchandise sponsor here for Season 8 of the SPL. And man, what a way we get to start off set number 2 of the day. Just Titans doing Titans thing, running a similar comp to what they did against the Dragons in their previous set, and making it basically just look unstoppable here, Mifflin.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans have clearly figured out a composition that works out very well for them. That style of play and that, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to work through our Cthulhu? Okay, well, you got past them. Now you're going to deal with all this healing. Oh, well, you dropped low and we're out of heals. Maybe Undying Love. Back off. Survivability from the Kamazot's ultimate. It was just really, really hard for the Leviathans to hit pay dirt in the back line of the Tartarus Titans. And I think it all starts off with some early rotations from layers, some great ganks. Gets the ball rolling early despite a stumble for First Blood, where the Leviathans were able to find that duo lane kill. Doesn't really matter when you're approaching the 22-minute mark, 7-1 kills on the board. The Tartarus Titans were in complete control.
Yeah, safe as this Hachiman pick normally is, it's not very safe when Layers just gets to consistently dive your backline with the help of Paul either being linked to him or Cyclone Spin. Just doing Cyclone Spin things on this set. The first player to really, in this season at the very least, bring the set back into the Hunter role, and he's been looking really strong on in these last couple of games that he's gotten his hands on. At this game was absolutely no exception. Lots of damage. I mean, Zapman effectively just got kind of nullified in this game on this Hachiman. He didn't get many opportunities to make big impacts, especially around this last little Phoenix fight on that left side. Zapman was still gone, and it just allowed Cyclone Spin to be able to just run amok through just about everybody.
Yeah, I know this is a Cyclone Spin clip here, but we got to give some credit to Paul for that Undying Love, man. Avoids so much damage for Cyclone Spin, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Even if you are able to work through the front line, you still have to deal with that sustain of the hell, or even if you're not able to even choose to work through the front line, well, all of a sudden the front line of the Titans has a lot more damage output thanks to back off, has a lot more survivability and CC immunity from that Aphrodite ultimate as well. Cyclone Spin goes huge in game 1, 17,000 damage on the board, and I don't know what you do if you're the Atlantis. Well, yeah, I do. Maybe ban the Cthulhu, maybe ban the Aphrodite, maybe ban both, but then you're leaving a lot on the table for the Tartarus Titans to take.
And this set has just been whittled into it. You know, we saw him pick it up the very first time in this phase, and we're like, okay, set ADC, okay, maybe having a little bit of fun. But ever since then, this pick has just become a menace in the duo lane. We even saw success out of it with Panda Cat previously. But here up in this game, man, Cyclone gets their run a tear. This Aphrodite on Paul. 3 players in that game go undying for the Titans, one being Paul and then Layers and Benji. Benji, while he wasn't able to find any kills that game, was no short of damage, 19,500+ that he was able to bust out on that Cthulhu. I'm kind of with you here, man. There's ways to deal with this composition. It's just a matter of how many of those bans do they elect to take towards that, and maybe how many of those picks they decide to grab for themselves.
I wonder how well that Tartarus Titans style of draft would fare without just the Cthulhu, because it feels like to me inside of the team fight phase, that might be the linchpin, the arc stone, if you would, that keeps everything holding together. So we'll see how the Atlantis Leviathans would like to deal with it as we do slip our way into P's and B's.
Yeah, picks and bans. Game number 2, the Tartarus Titans up 1-0 in our set here in the studio, and man, Leviathans now with their option 4 first pick have a lot that they can do here. They can maybe try and leave the Uller open, as so many teams have, even in the first slot, been banning this god away consistently, as that man has shown some high success on the god. Maybe they do leave it open to leave for a possible first pick, but that does leave so many other things that can be picked up. The Geb and the Sylvanas seem to be big priority picks out of the support specifically, even Yamoja, Kepri, so many frontliners that are out there on the table. Let's see where both these teams decide to set those priorities. It will be an Odin and a Terra, however, for the first bans.
If the Leviathans are able to find themselves in the possession of an Ull pick, I think that is one of the few answers to set inside of the dual lane. Dave does a really good job during that match saying, man, generally it's leaps in, you got engages, you got disengages, it's auto trades, who's landing more inside of the fight. That's how the dual lane generally pans out, but it simplifies when you're laning against a set. Did the set get into melee range up against your hunter? Oh, yeah, probably won that fight. So, which hunter picks on their own might be able to take that engagement at point-blank range? Ull comes to mind, the axe stun, the burst potential that he brings might be able to match a little bit of what Set's doing. I think Artemis as well could have that potential. Just drop the Caledonian Boar, drop the trap at your feet, disengage, force the beads off the set, and then try and find the win in your own right a little bit later on. But all that analysis, all that guesswork goes by the wayside here as Ull is banned out by the Tartarus Titans, leaving open the Ardio for the Leviathans.
And Yark the Shark gets to bring it back. He was the first one to bring it up here in the SPL, but now he'll get to run it back here in game number 2 of our set. The Uller and Yamoja with the Terra all banned away by the Titans, Geb, Morgan, and Odin away by the Leviathans. I think similar in that conversation with the Cthulhu kind of being a bit of a linchpin for that team, I think this Geb has been causing a lot of problems when you couple that with the Aphrodite, the shields, plus Undying Love, plus the healing back off everything that Aphrodite can do. You just get a double up when you have a giant AoE stun, when you have that shield, and just all the safety that those two gods alone can provide for just about any single member on a team.
But they can still go for similar styles of pick, the Tartarus Titans that is. You can pick up the Sylvanas and get a lot of protections afforded to your team by the Wisps, as well as that Lotus Crown start that has become very popular for this god. Kepri's still available, so even if you are working through all those defensive properties of Aphrodite, still got to get through the Scarab's Blessing yet again. So we'll see which way the Titans decide to pick here. They don't want to show too much of their hand, I'm expecting, or maybe they've come to the same conclusion as we have here on the desk. Cthulhu, first overall, locked in for the Tartarus Titans. This does open up some counter pick potential. I've been saying it for a while, but Nemesis has been one of the tried and true answers to this god. Descent into Madness, very hard to stop once you've been stripped of all your defenses by a Nemesis going forward. So they still do have that great CC core afforded to their team, and yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Cyclone Spin likely taking this set yet again.
Who's the one who said that?
I think it was Plato.
Plato? That sounds about right.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, something like that.
Somebody there. Set in Cthulhu for the Tartarus Titans here for their first 2 lock-ins. We've been seeing Set pretty much exclusively in the dual lane for this team, but we cannot discount the fact that it could possibly go in the jungle, but I'm willing to hedge my bets that this set will be going back in Cyclone's hands. Now 2 picks available to the Leviathans. They've got their solo laner with the Ardio. We have been seeing a little bit more support Ardio as of recent, but most likely will be piloted by Hardcore over on that right side of the map. Leviathans have a lot that they can grab here. They can grab their support if they wish to do so. Sylvanas is still open. Khepri is still open. If they want to take one of those big gods away from Aurora, they can try and lock in their hunter here for Zapman, get him something comfortable early on, maybe wait, and even maybe just grab a mid laner for Shinto. The world is their oyster at this point.
Yeah, only thing they're not going to do is pick wherever this RDO could be going, has flex potential into solo or support, so we'll see if we can get a better look at that, as the Leviathans move forward. If they do elect to take a Guardian here for support and they're trying to limit Aurora, I'd say that you probably want to go Khepri. That seems to be the pick that the Tartarus Titans go towards when the Geb is no longer available, but there it is. You said it earlier, maybe we were expecting it in Game 3, but Leviathans, with their back against the wall in a Game 2 situation, are going to take the Heimdall here. That's a very safe pick. It's one that Zapman has had a lot of success on in the past, and there's one of the top 2 mages in the game rearing her head, Tiamat, locked in as well. That's great late game scaling already. The Leviathans have got good disruption from the RDO, decent engage and survivability inside the back line. Heimdall can act as a solo agent. Tiamat essentially can join the front line if she so chooses in the late game phase of this one. But Tiamat's mobility is pretty limited inside of the team fight up against something like a Set. If you're using that leap to switch stances, all of a sudden you no longer have that escape. Set might be able to just chase you out.
Yeah, one of those gods that gave them so much trouble in game number 1. It's going to come back here now for the Tartarus Titans. Aphrodite locked in for Paul in that mid lane. That leaves a little bit up in the air still as to where the Tartarus Titans want to maybe potentially flex this Set. With a couple of jungle bands here to take some shots over at the Leviathans. They've got 2 of their frontliners, and they got 1 of their frontliners, 2 of their backliners. That's where I was trying to go with that in the Tiamat Heimdall. So a lot can be banned away here. But Serket seems to be the potential option out of Tartarus Titans. We have been seeing that flex over towards Rongyu quite a few times in that support role. And I think, what was it, the last time we were here, the last time we played, it was 2 minutes and 20 seconds was what production gave us the number for, where he just was sitting in mid lane stealth during like a 25-minute game. Spent almost 10% of the game just sitting stealth in mid. That one gets taken away with a Susano and then a couple frontliners out the window here. Khepri and Ares banned away by Leviathans.
The Leviathans doing a great job of limiting exactly what the Tartarus Titans are trying to pick up inside of that support role, so Aurora gonna have to go a little bit deeper into his own god pick order for whatever he wants. Could try and still go for that kind of beginning of Season 8 style where you go for the aggressive support and try and utilize some of that early game prowess that Aphrodite can bring with back off, or late game rather, and we'll see if that is the case. I am coming out of left field with this one, but for some reason Hercules is jumping to the forefront of my mind. It's something that Aurora has loved in the past and something he could certainly bring back out. Erlang Shen, though, is going to be the lock-in here, and I don't think it's a secret who this one's headed for. Layers has been loving this god recently.
Yeah, really both these junglers love it. Layers and Panatom have had great success, and now going back to Layers means that we know where the Set is going to be going. Now it's just a matter of what does Aurora want to go. I'm actually a little surprised that Sylvanas is left up, but neither team seem to want to go towards it just yet. It will be a Xing Chen locked in by the Leviathans, now just waiting on what their jungle is. They know what most of that 3v3 is going to be. Panatom really seems to like this Gilgamesh in the matchup, so he's going to take it in now for a second game in a row.
It's great space control. You've got decent scaling into the late game. You've got the opportunity to go for that new Mace style of play. You could also still build HP, have decent damage scaling regardless, thanks to the Sun Scimitar. I think a little bit more interesting is this Xing Shen lock-in. We've seen it a little bit more so today than we have for the rest of the phase, but it still does have some great potential to burn away these beads, create situations where this Gilgamesh ultimate can find more value, create situations where this Heimdall ultimate can work its way home. Why was I thinking about Hercules, though? Kuzenbo, still available, and yet again, the Tartarus Titans, their team identity, it's coming to the forefront. They're not hiding it. This is an annoying team. They're trying to be as annoying as humanly possible. Now Aphrodite going to be keeping just about everybody topped off, and they've got such a great front line, the Tartarus Titans. Kuzenbo can just stand in front of Tiamat, reflect damage killer. You've got the Watery Grave as backline disruption, Cthulhu as well, one of the best disruption gods in the game. I don't know, man. The Titans, I'm glad I'm not playing against them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm glad that we're here, at least for now, and then, we get to chill back there, and, even our casters can just sit by and watch it, because I definitely do not want to be fighting against a composition like this, and I fear that I'm probably going to see one too many of these games when I jump into my casuals. But what an obnoxious team comp. I think it's the best way to describe the Titans' last 3 or 4 comps they've built. Is just obnoxious. Almost impossible to deal with. Can't say impossible, because there have been some signs of life. The Leviathans, they're going to need more than just a sign of life. They're going to need an answer to this Tartarus Titans team. Do you think they have it here with this draft?
They've got good team fight potential, the Leviathans do. I am concerned about the early game presence. It's going to be a lot on the back of Panatom out of the jungle. This Gilgamesh does have the potential to pull an early lead, but if the Tartarus Titans are able to go to a late game phase with this composition, man, the team fight prowess is just so high. Cthulhu, Aphrodite, Kuzumbo, just such a great way to extend these fights.
Tartarus Titans looking to close it out here in 2. Can they do it? Let's take it right onto the battleground and see what pans out.
See if Layers' prediction was correct. A 2-0 set. It's got to be for the Titans at this point. If it's going to be a 2-0, the Tartarus Titans score. Look, they stick with what works, right? You can't fault them for that. They get Benji right back on Cthulhu. Paul gets the Aphrodite again. You get another pick that's maybe even more annoying than Geb to pair with it all, which is the Kuzumbo. That said, I do think the Geb shield is huge. You know, outside of just the tankiness from Geb, that shield, massive as far as the utility that Geb is able to provide. So definitely a different look with Aurora on the Kuzumbo instead of the Geb. But the heart of this draft is still the same for the Titans.
Yeah, that's I think really what you have to deal with is the Titans are going for the same draft with some tweaks, right? Layers maybe isn't as survivable as Camazot's on Erlong, but I think he's twice as obnoxious because of the taunts that are going to be able to come through. Plus, how quickly and early your damage is online. I mean, level 2 pin, even with an Afro behind you, could still be a lot of damage to worry about. And so I really do like the way the Titans have drafted this or changed their draft, even if it is going to be lacking some of the same survivability just in the metrics of losing Geb and some of the aspects of Camazot's. But it's going to be a favorable trade for them. If they get off to the same start, things are going to be just fine overall. Ardio's obnoxious in team fights, but I still feel like you get a little bit more out of the Cthulhu. And Tiamat can be a lot to handle, but Aphrodite's healing was definitely providing a lot. So at least in terms of some of those late-game team fights, it feels like they still have a slight ledge over the Leviathans.
I do wonder how this duo lane looks for Zapman here this game. You know, it felt like the Hachiban with the dash and the ultimate still was just never comfortable against Cyclone Spin on the set. So it's already early pressure for Zap and Rongyu, who are able to push that wave up. Aurora and Cyclone Spin left beneath their tier 1 tower. As maybe Panatom considering a gank in Benji's direction. Benji might make that choice for him if he continues to walk forward. Hardcore sends some damage and a root Benji's way. Panatom in behind, drop kick awaiting. Benji's gonna get blinked on here. As the drop kick against the wall, the body blocks send Benji running right back the other way. Layers is lurking over by the blue buff. Can Benji buy enough time? Panatom goes up and over, and the knockup from Layers is huge. Big play out of the jungle for the Titans.
They still have some damage coming through, and Yarkor's chasing him down.
Yarkor with the last bit of damage here will find first blood. Leviathan strike first. Didn't make it easy. It was a great play from Layers. But the Leviathans get the kill nonetheless.
And that's a good pickup. I mean, not only do you get the first blood, you get it immediately onto Yarkor. You get a level lead over the Cthulhu. Bad news bears is that late game Cthulhu is still Cthulhu, so you do have to use this advantage and use this, admittedly, what feels like big pickup as fast as you can. They invade the blue buff. They do what they can on this side of the map. And that maybe allows Panatom to start looking around the rest of the world for what he can do. Shinto, Tiamat has some good follow-up up against Aphrodite. Might not be the place where we see a lot of the ganks coming through. And then my eyes turn over to the duo lane. Cyclone Spin shutting him down. That would be a huge deal for late game.
Who was the team that beat the Bolts to end their huge run earlier on?
The Kings.
Okay, it was the Kings. Oh, and then it was the Kings who beat the Titans when the Titans were on there. For some reason, I thought it was the Titans that was ending all the win streaks, and I'm thinking they have a chance to do it again here against the Leviathans, but no, it's the
They're about to high-five the Kings for it.
That's right. They can high-five one another with their similar accomplishments throughout the year here. So the Leviathans with that first blood gore, the ability to push some extra pressure on the right side of the map. Yarkor with a 1-level lead now over Benji. Ardio, not a pick that I think about loving being behind against, and now Yarkor has got a Void Stone here for himself. That's been a popular starter item for the Ardios, the Cthulhus of the world. You get a little bit of that extra power online early, and then reduce the magical prots of anyone that you're around. So it's a pretty good starter item, not only for Ardio, not only for Cthulhu, but many others.
Especially because they're in a Guardian v Guardian matchup, right? Like when you know that you're going up against somebody, so you get magical prots, magical power, and you reduce their prots. Admittedly, maybe once they're both online, kind of smashing into each other in a way. But it does help out, especially early on for some ganks. And then late game, especially with how deep Artio is going to be playing, that's going to be a big deal for both the Cthulhu and the Kuzenbo.
Yep.
And so it should ideally help them out. Hell, it might even help for Paul. I don't know what kind of build he's going to go, although something similar wouldn't be too surprising. If he has any magical prots, that's going to make it maybe even easier to kill off the Aphrodite, which is something the Leviathans were struggling with last game.
Yeah, Paul was annoying to say the least in the last game. I mean, Aphrodite, the type of pick that prompts those types of words. Wrong and Zapman, though, here, Gore, on the left side of the map, have seemingly felt comfortable in the early stages of this game. We joke about the Zapman passive, but of course you're not hoping that you have to get to a point where Zap is behind to actually be in a point of impact in the game. And of course that's entirely a joke. My point being, Zapman actually being ahead is always going to be a more comfortable spot, especially on this Heimdall. You need a little time to get wound up here into these games, late game. The Heimdall able to chunk down those health bars pretty effectively, and it's going to be so important when you're going up against this type of team, the Cthulhu, the Kuzenbo, that your Heimdall is not only not super behind Gore, but in a spot in the team fights themselves to output a lot of damage. We saw Panda Cat on a similar style pick get shut down the other day.
And that's something that you have to be worried about, especially when Cyclone Spin is having such a huge impact in these late game team fights. I mean, there is a little bit to be said. Cyclone probably won't be able to get as many like one-on-one kills or as close to it as he was able to
Probably not a
during the last
lead.
game. But it is something that, you know, maybe you're not going to make this crazy lead. Maybe you're not going to leave 2 levels high.
A lot of damage.
You're still going to be a huge impact in these team fights. Zapman should be able to. He's a lot of damage. You just got to see some of that on Cyclone Spin. But I do think that it's going to be the testament of how well Cyclone can dive into the backline once again. I mean, Tiamat's going to be a little more successful at staying alive. Gilgamesh should be. It's going to be a lot harder to kill off the Leviathans than it was last time. And so their changes up in the draft should help them for survivability and should be able to help turn around some kills either on Delayers or Cyclone.
Well, survivability has been the name of the game for the Tartarus Titans. Will be, Gore, for reasons you've just listed and more. Very important for the Leviathans. So Sovereignty is the first option here from Wrong You. Maybe showing that Layers and Cyclone Spin, the two who are going to get active early and often, might be the big threat here. Zapman knocks back a Roar just briefly, looking at the purple buff, but Cyclone Spin is going to grab that one relatively free. It's a slight grouping here from the Leviathans around this red buff. The steal attempt is in, ends up getting dropped down by the Tartarus Titans. So, can you get a push on the backside? Have you done too much? If you're the Leviathans, the link is out. Cyclone Spin low on health, very low on mana, and he's got to leave. Shinto controlling the space over the wall as the Tiamat will push the Titans back.
And I like the presence of mind where Paul is at. Don't need to heal Cyclone Spin, because with no mana, he's going to be back in the base anyway. You don't need to use any of yours trying to keep him alive. Instead, you can try to get aggressive. Wrong, you might have overstayed his welcome.
Able to walk on away for the time being, unless Paul wants to send some more damage that way. We've seen this Xing Qin Gore, what, 2 or 3 times now over the weekend. Maybe a pick that the utility that it provides makes it a worthwhile addition to your team comp.
Look, there's a lot to be said about this Xing Qin and where he fits in. He always seems to be just on the cusp. And he's actually, so not only is it a good idea to get your Roar, but it also, if I remember correctly, reduces the basic attack damage that whoever you hit is going to be dealing to you, which when you look at what Panatom and Zapman are going to be doing, that's going to be very helpful for them and try to help knock them up and find a lot of control. And yeah, you can see the damage reduction up to 50% for the basic attack damage. If you get that onto something like a Heimdall, that feels pretty good in a lot of these team fights.
Yep.
And it can help out a lot for your assassins in terms of giving them a little more pressure, a little more longevity. And so for the Leviathans, this is going to potentially, brain melted for whatever reason. It helps slow down the assassins.
It's been a long
there
weekend,
we go.
Gore. It's been a long weekend. We give ourselves a little bit of a break.
It'll make Cyclone Spin hurt.
It'll make Cyclone Spin, that's right. And that's, look, after the game 1 that Cyclone Spin had, anything that you can do to slow that down, thumbs up. Big thumbs up from me. Paul's still in a power spot here. Looks like similar build from what he had in game 1. We'll follow along with that as the game goes on. Different look here for Shinto, though. Was Raijin, remember, in game 1. Charon's coin was the start on the Raijin. but some of that additional cooldown, some of the CDR for Shinto on this Tiamat valued a little bit earlier on. Then Gore, I think, smart. Looks like what should be a Divine Ruin after that.
Very similar pathing to the item builds last time around, and it's just because right now, look, early on, you don't have to worry too much about what that Aphrodite is throwing at you in terms of healing. In a few minutes, once that Divine Ruin's done, that's about the time Paul and the rest of the Titans should be making more of an impact or more active plays across the map. And that's when we're going to start seeing those Aphro heals really come into the fray of the fights. So anything to shut them down early. He finishes the Divine Ruin. There's the Brawler's Beat Stick as well. Last time they went for a Cursed Ankh, I think that's going to carte blanche be a really good relic, but
Yeah.
it is something that maybe if they can shut down Paul early enough and not worry too much about it, they might be able to get away with not doing it. But it seems like too high of a risk to take late game just for the possibility of having a lead.
Layers will have some sustain in there as well as far as healing goes on the back end of his ultimate. So definitely something.
Yeah, the
to
more
look
I
at.
think about it, just go Ankh.
You've convinced
Don't
yourself.
don't even entertain the other options.
You've convinced yourself. Well, Rangyu's got 3 levels to go before he'll answer that question for us. While this game has slowed down, the Leviathans have themselves about a 1.3k gold lead. And that's not too unlike how things were at the very, very beginning of Game 1.
Yeah.
Where the Leviathans were down in kills, but they still felt like they had control of the map as far as gold goes. But then the Titans just chose those right times to fight and ended up pushing things further. So that it feels like that's the hat that's waiting to drop now is a fight around an objective. Or maybe here in the mid lane, because Panatom has joined the fight, and the ultimate from Aurora does so much here. Panatom not able to re-engage on Paul because he was just disrupted from start to finish by that watery grave.
Yeah, that was just really good peel from Aurora. Paul does still use his ult, though, as well as his beads, so those are going to be on cooldown, makes him a lot more susceptible to ganks from the Leviathans. And as you had highlighted, not too different of a scenario for the Leviathans than what we saw last game, except that the Titans were the ones picking up neutral objectives. They were able to get a Gold Fury for free and tie up the game in terms of gold. They were able to pick up the Pyromancer, I believe, afterward, and they then got a Primal Fury. They had 3 unanswered neutral objectives before we saw the Leviathans pick anything up. So the Leviathans keeping up that pace, but stopping the Titans from having anywhere near the capabilities around like a Gold Fury is making it skew a lot more in favor of the Order side team.
Gold Fury does stand over here on left, should these teams want to send everyone in that direction. The Leviathans, in the meantime, able to get the Pyromancer. That'll help out that gold lead just a little bit further. Cyclone's been searching for Zapman. Might find him here over the wall. Instead, just going to wait for this Harpy to spawn back up. Oracle's standing. I was hoping we would see a little bit of a scrap there, and this would be a 3 versus 2 immediately for the Tartarus Titans, except for the fact that Shinto is there in mid, so would have been able to rotate in, make it a 3 versus 3. And all right, Gore, we're kicking up our feet and vibing a little bit here in Game 2. Seems like both teams happy to just let this one scale out, not wanting to force any objectives that are unnecessary, one side or the other. It seemed like the Titans were just fine letting that Pyromancer go and getting themselves to a point of scaling and team fight winning probability.
I am, anxious, I guess is maybe the word, worried for both of these teams, because I think they both have really good late game scaling, and I think that both of them have really good late game team fights. Admittedly, I may be more worried for the Titans because it is a slowly but surely growing lead for the Leviathans. If they keep up this pace, they are going to have some very interesting late game fights. But I mean, we're used to this. Like, if you go back, not just in metas of old for the SBL, but watch Europe, you watch Europe in the SEC now. This is very much the way they like to play. They're going to farm, they're going to look for little advantages, maybe some skirmishes, but not a lot of kills that come out. Realistically, this game could end up being 5 total kills across the board. It's just one team with one overwhelming team fight
Yeah, doesn't it feel that way?
in the next
That
10
you're gambling
minutes.
on like one big fight?
It's again, it's a little nerve-wracking. Like, you still have, I would argue, 7 to 8 minutes before like one bad team fight could ruin your game.
Right, loses the game outright as far as a Titan push, but with a pace like this, you know, one lopsided trade could
Is all you need.
could set you up for that,
Yeah,
right?
it's the domino effect of waiting too long.
Don't wait too long. You heard it here first from Goremizer, the wise philosopher. Mifflin's been on a philosopher kick here.
Yeah, I
this
wanted
weekend.
him to say Socrates,
Right, instead of
just because
Socrates.
it's just really funny to me. I don't know why.
You know what, Gore? That doesn't surprise me. That Socrates is humorous to you. Zapman engaging, and I mean that in a good way. I hope you didn't take
No,
that
I did not
offensively.
take it. No offense taken.
All right, good.
I get what you mean. That is absolutely a me thing.
And I love, and we can let the viewers in on this.
I can
as
hear
well.
my wife deeply
I
sighing
was gonna
at
say,
it.
look, yeah, the pace of this game is a little bit slower, so we can open the door to your relationship with your wife a little bit. Was it you and J-Mac casting yesterday,
Yes.
and you let out a
I
Gandalf.
said, "You shall not pass."
You shall not pass. And Katie
I did the voice and everything.
Did the voice and everything. Katie is in the green room with Mifflin and I while we're watching the game. She goes, "William, why?" She just yells at me, like, "Katie, what?" She's like, "He does this all the time at home. I wanted to just sit at work and listen to the games, and I gotta hear it there too." And then she brought up you laughing with the fake skull the other day, whatever. It was so and you said she was consistent, right? Because you
Yeah.
came back and she said this.
When I walked into the green room, she goes, "Did you really have to make a Gandalf reference?" God, I love her.
Yes, you do, and you have a model relationship that all would hope for, Gore. She puts up with you somehow.
It says something that I get to hear these complaints about me grieved, and all I can do is laugh at them because
And you're like,
all
"Yeah."
it does is add fuel to the fire.
You're like, "Yeah, you're right. Right, you're gonna go home."
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna make even more Lord of the Rings references.
Katie, I'm sorry if you're listening. I apologize. What is she? She was in Twitch chat earlier today. What?
Yeah.
Purple ranch dressing. I
Purple
think is it?
ranch dressing. Everyone tag at Purple Ranch Dressing.
And then just send Lord of the Rings.
And
Yeah,
do-
she's a
oh,
mod
she's
now.
a mod now.
That's right. Send Lord.
Okay,
of
wait.
the Wait.
Hold on.
She
Wait.
might
Hold
be-
on.
she might
Be very careful. You are playing with fire.
That's right. I was gonna say send Lord of the Rings quotes.
She's
her
been
way.
given too much power.
She has been. All right, Gold Fury, here we go by the Tartarus Titans. Is the response in from the Leviathans? The sword is up from Zapman. Down it goes, but it's not in time, and the Titans will grab the Gold Fury for themselves. Zapman sends some autos Aurora's way. And we are backing ourselves right back off here, Gore. And that's a good objective for the Tartarus Titans to get. It'll help shrink up some of that gold lead. So if we're dead set on not fighting, my God, the XP charts are chaotic right now because there's not really the lead has been so small that the 600 changes make it look.
It looks like
so
a
crazy.
seismograph in the middle of a earthquake.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't. Whatever that earthquake is, I don't want to be a part of. A deep dip down though in that gold, the gold lead, Gore. And if we're dead set on not fighting here, a Gold Fury actually kind of impactful as far as mitigating the only real difference in the game.
I don't know about you, but this was the glitch in the Matrix, right? This is the deja vu. Something happened again. Game 1, it's the Leviathans passively, not actively really farming up a lot of gold. They're not getting a lot of kills, but they're getting gold leads. And then the Titans come over, get a Gold Fury, tie the game back up. Unfortunately for the Titans, they're not leading 6-1 this time around. It's just been a crude,
Do you feel
the
like
old-fashioned way.
Do you feel like there has been a missed opportunity in a game like this where you know you get layers on the Erlong Shen, and you have the ability to get active pretty early on? Panatom, you know, maybe you could say the same thing about the Gilgamesh. Do you think there's a missed opportunity, or is this a pretty active decision from both teams to just kick back, scale up, and we feel better about our team?
I think it's pretty proactive. Nobody in this game, Aurora, yeah, no, he should be fine.
No, he'll walk away.
Like, nobody in this game, in my mind, except for maybe the Erlong Shin, is really looking to do a lot in the first 10 minutes of this game even. Right? Like, Erlong Shin can get active, and if you have a great mid laner, if it was a Raijin beside him, go for it. You're going to fight. It's Aphrodite beside you. Like,
That's a good
she's
point.
got a little bit of bite, but not as much as you'd like. This, 18-minute plus mark, the team fights, they both teams flourish in this. And Shinto's going to start coming online. This is where the true power spikes for Tiamat, the true healing numbers, the true assassin damage should be coming from the Titans. And, of course, for Heimdall, he's got his build online now, so this should be where we start to see a little bit more punch from these teams.
Seems like we are destined to start fighting once everyone has hit level 20. Cyclone Spin is almost there. Zapman just a little bit behind. And another preemptive Spectral Armor for Benji. Benji left it to the 5th item slot. Wait, how many numbers are 6? The 6th item slot, if you're counting the starter item. Had the cloak and then pivoted into the Spectral Armor much earlier on here in this game for Benji. And so, I guess if the pacing is the way that it is, and you need a big, big team fight helping items such as the spectral armor makes some sense that Benji gets it earlier.
It feels like Benji and Aurora's game plan is to let the Leviathans kill themselves using thorns and reflect damage right now. And so far, they haven't had to worry too much about it. Like it's this weird state of the game. For 20 minutes now, granted they didn't have it until level 12, but thorns has been maybe the most useless relic you could have in this game because no one's been dealing damage to you. But at the same time, over the next 5 minutes, it is going to skyrocket and how helpful it is going to be for these teams. And I think that Benji, especially with the forefront and what Cthulhu can provide, is going to be a really key player for the Titans in setting themselves up. This has just been a steady game for the last, 3-4 minutes? Essentially, since that Gold Fury goes down, it has felt like it is no ripples in the water. Very still lake.
Yep, very still. There was a slight ripple as Cyclone Spin walked in towards the Pyromancer, but it ended up going quietly to the Leviathan. So, on one side of the map, the Leviathans take the Pyro. A few moments before that, the Tartarus Titans able to quietly grab themselves the Gold Fury. Yeah, the only real ripples in this game, Gore, the ups and downs in the old XP chart there. Slight uptick in the gold differential back towards the Leviathans. And in a game where the teams are happy with a slower pace, 700 gold could be pretty impactful. Then, though, you spread it across 5 people. You're talking about 100, 200 gold kind of across the individual lines there. Maybe doesn't feel quite as big. Couple auto attacks hitting from Zapman, but Cyclone's been able to return the favor. Big 129 crits there out of Zapman. As the XP, Gore, you don't have to get to see that. Returns literally to dead even for just a moment. And then the Tartarus Titans take it back just a little bit further.
I mean, it's going to bounce like this. Look, we really, I was joking, but we really are getting on pace.
We're doing it. We're doing it. We're blinking on it. All right, never mind. Cyclone Spin's got the beats and has the ability to
So here's what I'm going to start talking about.
But
let's look.
There wasn't a kill, but.
Okay.
But you get the beads. And you get some value there. You do have to use your blink, but I think you're taking the beads.
That might be the
Cyclone
first
Spin.
time in 10+ minutes that a relic has been down in this game.
Yeah, you might be right, unless we're like blinking to get back towards our farm. Aurora chasing down Zapman, who uses his ultimate to dash away. Primal Fury pulled by the Atlantis Leviathans. There's a rotation through from the Titans. I can feel it. It's happening. We're on the brink of an engagement, and Aurora is the one to start it off for the Titans. Primal Fury goes to the Leviathans. And we walk away once again.
Yeah, just a little too late from the rotation for everyone else on the Titans. Aurora's there. Aurora almost steals it. But the Titans are just slow on the upkeep, or are really just engaging. If Benji had been there 10 seconds earlier, that fight is going to be a little more explosive. And this is where I was going to go before, where we've seen a lot of low kill games over the most recent SBL games, including last year and this year. We've seen the lowest kill counts be 7 total in a single game. And so 7 is typically the number you need to win. However, the lowest of all time is 5. Granted, that was I think a surrender. So something that you have to keep in mind with that.
Yeah.
This, I'm telling you, one team gets 4 kills.
Were in that one Envy match where.
Oh, the on the polar opposite. Oh no, the one Envy game. It was 2 minutes. They had 7 kills.
Okay, so it was more than that. Wow, in 7 minutes.
Someone actually managed to do less than that.
Someone managed to do less than that.
But it was a surrender.
It was
still.
a surrender. There is a. You
It's
said
just like 13
so it was the
minutes.
lowest 5?
Yes.
All right, we're still in the wheelhouse. We're beneath 5 right now.
Here's the other thing, and this is something I don't know. Maybe we could pull this for like waiting room. I don't know how many games get to 23 minutes with all 12 towers still standing. That's actually kind of nuts.
Yeah, Gore, actually, I would never have because I'm trying to think now of that one waiting room graphic. It was the
where the
Fact
towers
Sheet Gaming.
fall. Which ones fall first? Was
I don't
the
know,
question.
like right on average or whatever. I don't know if many of them were beyond like the 20-minute mark. I think you're right. Like on average, at least one has gone down. We're gonna see it here. Zapman walks in. Auto. Tower number 1 of the game falls on the right side of the map, and the Leviathans Gore passively continuing to build up that gold lead. Whether it's Furies, whether it's towers, whether it's Pyromancers. The Leviathans have 2K gold in the back pocket.
And this has been really comfortable for them. And you had mentioned it. Look, we were kind of memeing at the time, but we genuinely might see most people hit level 20 before we see a true 5-on-5 team
I wasn't
fight.
memeing. I knew we were.
You knew what we were in for?
I thought so. That said, there have been moments where like Aurora's really low or Cyclone Spin gets really low, something like that.
Yeah.
And like almost adding a big kill, but not to be. In the meantime, Cyclone's gotten his beads back. Panatom has gotten his blink back. And so it does end up being a bit of a wash there.
Hey,
on the
Paul,
left side of the map.
Paul hits 20. That's the majority to me. Supports have hit 17. That's
Yeah,
their level
we're
20.
ignoring supports. They hit level 17. That's what counts. Both star items have been upgraded. Compassion on one side.
There is so much weight riding on good team fights here for two comps that are really good at
Yep.
team fighting and two teams that excel at team fighting as well. I think this is going to be some pressure, and it might be the Pyromancer of all things that gets things started off.
Arcor's getting aggressive. He'll blink in. Benji uses his ultimate, and we are fighting on the battlegrounds.
They don't have Paul.
We are not fighting on the battlegrounds. I don't want to undercut any of the seriousness of the game, but it does make me laugh. You get a big ult out of Benji, a blink in from Yarkor and Panatom, and then we disengage. Benji heads back to base. Pyromancer secured by the Atlantis Leviathans. And once again, we'll walk on backwards. This may be, upcoming may be the longest Fire Giant dance we've ever seen. We've seen some like 10-minute ones. Gore could be going a little bit longer than that, unless the Arcor gets caught out here, gets a double stun.
Oh my god!
The damage is huge! We had nothing going on for 25 minutes, and suddenly all at once it happens. Yarkor deletes Paul. Cyclone Spin still alive in this fight. He'll have to do the majority of the remaining damage. He's got a big play. Back against the wall, doesn't matter. 3-for-1 for the Leviathans.
I gotta see that at like 0.25 speed. Where did Layer's health go? I mean, nothing for so long, and then you blink and you miss the amount of damage that gets dealt into him. Plus, they've already burned Benji's ult. I mean, except for a roar and maybe some really big spin-to-win plays, which now that's going to be down. This seems like it should be a Fire Giant for the Leviathans.
The Titans have at least delayed the FG. The Leviathans are missing Panatom. Fire Giant picked back up, though, by the Leviathans. Tartarus Titans closing this gap. You're right, Gore. It is slow. A roar. Very low on HP, though. Shinto dealing a lot of damage to the Kuzumbo.
Oh, you can't die here.
Just a few moments away from dashing away. He does die. Shinto grabs that one. Fire Giant low. The respawns are back from the Tartarus Titans. Beeve just traded out. The other frontliners are now going to maybe get some pressure put onto him. Aurora's dead for 45 seconds. Fire Giant around the waist of the Leviathans. 26 minutes in, and all five got it.
What we thought could have been a really long Fire Giant dance, maybe it was technically a 25-minute Fire Giant dance, but realistically, in the blink of an eye, the Leviathans just go for it, and they're able to get it. I mean, shotgun damage from Shinto was absolutely nuts. Plus, Aurora, this is the reason you can't die there. 20 seconds left before he's even back. This should be a very easy engage. The problem is where the Leviathans want to put it. They're going to get a lot of gold from towers here, but I don't know that they have as much Phoenix Siege potential as they would like just yet. Back off, spend some items. They lose a Primal Fury in the process, but there's still 4 towers standing. You're not even looking at the Titan room right now. You are trying to figure out pretty much all the small stops in between.
Well, Panatom 1v1 with Cyclone Spin, and this one is not close at all. Goodbye, Cyclone Spin, for the second time this game. You'll be able to head back, maybe finish up that final item. Cyclone Spin does a lot of damage here at this point. Jotun's fully stacked Transcendence, Crusher, Heartseeker. And a great target for Panatom to get off the map.
Yeah, really good CC. Look, beads aren't available for all 3 members or all 3 main carries for the Titans. So Panatom recognizes that as long as you get something on the field, you're going to be able to get that damage out there. And the follow-through from not only him, but just the amount of damage Cyclone Spin could not turn around, despite what we know that ceiling to be, makes it so much easier for them. And in the blink, not even a blink of an eye, but something slightly longer than that, they get all of the towers. They get all that gold. It's just such a massive swing.
2 blinks of the eye. Not one, a second eye blinking, maybe. Phoenix has some pressure put on it by Hardcore on the left. The rest of the 4 members of the Leviathans walking in towards mid. 5 seconds on Cyclone Spin plus travel time. Titans showing up in force here, though. Aurora pops the Thorns. They'll send some damage back towards the Leviathans. We are fully stocked up on defense for the Tartarus Titans. The Cyclone Spin will respawn, gets the Mantle of Discord as well. 2 minutes remaining on the FG push. The Tartarus Titans won't want to let these Phoenixes go without a fight.
They have a good comp for a defense. They've got a lot of healing. Layers could get a good taunt and really disrupt the backline. Cyclone Spin's the one you got to keep your eyes on. Alongside Layers, the damage numbers that they are outputting are going to need to be massive, because right now Layers is sitting at the very bottom. Cyclone Spin's not too much further up. Versus the 21K, almost 22K, now 22K, that has been put out by Shinto. Both of them together haven't even been able to match that number.
Yeah, it feels a little different. Leviathan's mid laner has just poured out damage. This Phoenix has not taken a lot of damage at all. The wave clear has been good from the Tartarus Titans. The body blocking not allowing Zapman to step forward, and this is why, because Aurora can find the engage for free on the back. Aurora's
There's Cyclone.
Back against the wall. Cyclone Spin engages onto Panatom, and the Leviathans now reeling backwards after a big opening kill from the Tartarus Titans ADC. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel sends Aurora right on back, though, and the kill will be traded.
That's a really good stun, but you got rid of the jungler. As long as Cyclone and Layers can stay alive, they had a really good through line to Zapman and Shinto. They aren't going to be able to get there and retaliate. Zapman, I don't even know where he got all that health. I guess he has the Aussie, which is pretty helpful for them.
Yeah.
As well as just a little bit of healing coming down from the RDO feels impactful all around. And now he's starting to swing. That is a very deadly high
Big old crit. Big old crit. Even outside of the crits. Chin size, dominance. And so the Leviathans are able to crack the base of the Tartarus Titans nonetheless. So left side Phoenix is gone. That'll still be down by the time the next Fire Giant respawns. And it will be enhanced. And so, you know, it is a tale as old as time. Left side Phoenix down. We go back. We fight over FG. It's the next minute or so where the Titans can try to find some semblance of map control here on the left. You got Tiamat and Fire Minions pushing in. So you've got to push these waves so far out, it probably feels like, for the Titans to give yourself any time to hang out by the Fire Giant.
Yeah, this is going to be actually surprising. Like, this is where things are really weird. This game is 9K apart, almost 10K apart. Fire Giant, you know, you're missing 6 towers versus 5 still standing on the other side. You've got a Phoenix that's been knocked down. It feels so close, despite how much is in favor.
Look how small the bumps in the XP chart are now. They're not there. There were mountains, there were cliffs before. And then just a tiny little scraggly line. For the first 23 minutes of this game, we were even.
That's
we were
very
dead even.
similar to when, like, this is a really weird niche of mine, but watching things where it's like the comparison of like Earth versus like, oh, here's Earth compared to our sun, compared to the next biggest star, things like that. That's what that graph is.
Yep. Right, we were zoomed so far in, we're analyzing the 300 XP swings in the first 20 minutes of the game, and now we zoom out, and they really didn't mean much of anything. They've gotten us to this point, though, where the Leviathan's in commanding control of at least the left side of the map. The game, you might agree, but the Titans may be feeling like they're on even footing if they're able to step up and compete for this Fire Giant. Hardcore is channeling the back, won't end up confirming it. Fire Minions pushing down the left side. That's going to send Layers on back to base, and that's going to send the Leviathans on to the FG. Enhanced Fire Giant has been started up here. 5 versus 4 immediately around the Fire Giant pit. Aurora's in, promptly out. Plenty of damage out of Zapman. Panatom and Shinto is going to get this Fire Giant nice and low. Aurora closing the gap. Looking for the steal. Oh, they've done it! The Tartarus Titans have taken it away. This game is flipped on its head. The Leviathans thought they were in the lead.
Benji's up.
But you got to win the fight afterwards. Hardcore stunned in place. Benji disengaging, and the Titans will get the fire.
That is such a huge swing for them if they can make it out. Benji should live here, and the rest of the team seems to be fine, but Yarkor's going in. That might be too deep.
He is Blade 4 double stun. One on Benji, one onto Aurora. And Aurora will dash away, but now Layers left alone with the rest of the Leviathans.
No.
Benji survives, but what's the cost? It's your jungler.
And Cyclone Spin might just be after.
Oh, Cyclone's been able to get out as well, though. Good engage from Zapman is going to force the defensive positioning. Watch out, though. The Titan is down to half HP all in the meantime. The Tartarus Titans will walk back on into their base, missing half of the health on their biggest objective.
They get Layers on top of that. If you get the Fire Giant, this game's done for the Leviathans, but the fact that they lose the Fire Giant, still win the fight, is such a big deal for them in terms of control. Luckily, this should be a wide opening. I mean, you walk in, Aurora does as much as he possibly can for disruption, but it's Cyclone Spin. Yeah, a little bit of damage there from the set. Either way, there's so much going on in the fray. I like that the Titans commit to that. Plus, they've done a good job defending over on left. That Titan's at half health, but it should heal up once that Phoenix respawns. They've only got 1, maybe 2 more waves after the one that Cyclone Spin's dealing with. The Fire Minions that they're going to have to worry about. And there's a lot of gold on the map to make up for this deficit, just if they are able to set themselves up for towers. Good note, they've got physical damage. Bad note, it is not very far range. They have to be in melee range.
Yep.
And that opens up opportunities for the Leviathans to mount defenses around tier 2s easily. And they might not even have to worry about that, depending on if they can catch the Titans out prior.
To say that this game has been a bit of a struggle for Layers is maybe an understatement. It's 3,800 damage exactly, 34 minutes into the game. And I guess maybe it makes some sense here, Gore. I mean, you're Long Shen, yeah, like you just mentioned it. You have to get into melee range. You have to walk in.
Yeah.
Maybe the best Layers can hope for here at this point in the game is a big taunt onto a priority target of the Leviathans. If you can get Panatom, Shinto, Zapman, if you can play Peel, you can get a pin. Maybe it's a more utility role at this point for Layers because the damage just hasn't been there.
I don't think it's outlandish to say, but if Layers can just get a single pin onto somebody with a just slight bit of follow-up, we probably see him double his damage almost instantly.
Right.
Again, it's been very slow rolling. One pin shouldn't do 3,800.
Could you imagine?
He's going to be able to climb up pretty fast just with the setup that he can provide. And this is where this draft, as good as it is, it does falter, right? I mean, Shinto is doing a good job of staying alive. He's got a bubble as well, so he's not only just Tiamat scaling, but also has a little bit of prots and safety built into his build to make sure that he's not going to be too worried about it. And so Layers and Cyclone have a lot of work cut out for him. The person they could kill the easiest, with quotes around it, is Zap. And good luck doing that. Zap's going to hit you with 2 crits in a row, and you're going to be dead before you know what you're doing.
That's right. Zapman has swapped out his first item here. I believe it was the Crusher that we saw for Zap. Trades it out for a Toxic Blade. So that'll finish off the build, you assume, for the time being, for Zapman. Potion of Power. Going to be the only additional addition for Zapman down the stretch here. So now we get this map state back closer to even for the Tartarus Titans. 30 seconds left on the Enhanced Fire Giant. Did the Leviathans put up a defense around the tier 2? There's a lot of game left.
Oh, they can.
Played. Roar. Taken low, not taken down just yet. Full-on disengage from the Tartarus Titans, but Benji, staunch on the front line, is going to keep Panatom, going to keep Zapman, Shinto, all of them at bay because everyone on the Titans is down to half HP. Have the Leviathans cracked the code? Have you figured out how to fight around these Cthulhu compositions? It sure seems so. And his name is Shinto, 503. Picking up a kill here in what could be the last fight of the game.
Yeah, in what has been the polar opposite from what we've gotten to see out of the jungle for the Titans here. Shinto has done 31,000 damage and is looking to be just unstoppable with what he has been able to provide. So much that is going in favor of this mid laner, and I don't know that they have a good answer for it.
Gore, it looks like we're headed on to another Game 3 here this weekend unless Aurora can make some magic happen. Zapman connects with his ultimate. Cyclone Spin jumped on by Panatom off to the right. And goodbye Kuzumbo once more after the ultimate times out. Watery Grave does, and so does Aurora's Light. Panatom notches that kill. Now Yarkor into the base of the Tartarus Titans. And the Leviathans will turn their eyes towards the big one. They will turn their eyes towards a game number 3. Cyclone Spin will get some help with the Mantle proc. Gets a kill onto Zapman, which would be impactful if the rest of his team weren't dead. And the Titan falls, and the Leviathans send us to 3.
Yeah, you have 2 assassins, and neither of them got to do the assassin thing. Unfortunately, it took way too long for the Titans to come online. Maybe the lack of fighting early on, just no pressure for Layers to apply anywhere, and the fact that Zap is so safe, the fact that Tiamat is so safe, it just made it so there wasn't anyone for them to start picking up those early kills. And, you know, what? By the time they fight 25 minutes in, it comes down to how well can you kill Cthulhu if you're the Leviathans, and I guess realistically for the Titans from what we saw, how well can you escape from this RDO, because that was setting up so much. Good stuns, good damage, and really locking down the Titans.
Gore, this is really the first time we've seen this style of composition feel like they were on the back foot. You know, Benji was playing separator more than he was walking in. You're walking back with the Cthulhu in front of you instead of walking forward with a Cthulhu in front of you. The Leviathans got it figured out in game number 2. Can they do it again in game 3, though? That's the mystery. Stick around and find out.
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally
Anything.
with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's @Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com. I know Mike didn't say the thing. Mike, can you say the thing for him?
You're telling me an alien wore this?
Had some channel points to throw there because I would have got it right because it was the delayed Alienware. And speaking of Alienware, big shout out to them for being the sponsor here for Season 8 of the SPL, providing not just the players but us here in the studio for these players to be able to play on some of the most powerful gear out there. The Aurora Ryzen 10 desktop, the 240 Hz 25-inch gaming monitor, all that. Thanks to our title sponsor at Alienware. Go to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW. Get all the information on those cool pieces of equipment yourself. And why don't you go over and follow them on their social media at Twitter and Instagram at Alienware. Go to alienwarearena.com to see what else Alienware has out there to offer. We're going to game number 3, our second game 3 of the day, our fourth game 3 of the weekend. It's been a long weekend for us here in the SPL here in week number 4. And, man, that was just a game that felt like not a whole lot happened, and then all of a sudden everything happened.
Yeah, I was listening into the Tartarus Titans comms, and after this first one that you see on screen right here on Benji, they said, all right, guys, we're going to buckle down, let's wait it out 20 or so minutes in, and then that's where we're going to start to strike. But in their process of doing so, they allowed the Leviathans to get a couple of neutral objectives, uncontested, a couple of towers as well, and that gold lead kind of netted the Leviathans a situation in which they could go with unbridled aggression, and from there, they were able to secure themselves a win. But it was contentious inside of the late game, to say the least. A couple of Fire Giant steals, some back and forth team fights. It certainly was a very fun game to watch. But this time around, the Leviathans are able to take us to a Game 3 situation. And, man, I can't think of a better way to end this week.
Man, wasn't it you who called the 3 games at the very beginning
No,
of
it
the day?
couldn't have been me. If I don't get right, bro. I'm wrong.
Nah, I'm going to give you credit here. You talk
I'll
about a
take it.
potential 3 games. So Shinto here on this Tiamat, the fact that some teams have kind of been ignoring this god, but it seems that Shinto is not one of those players, nor are Leviathans one of those teams just kind of let this god go through. They'll pick it up here in game number 2. He looked good on it, 5-0 and 5. And I mean, it was 1-0 all the way to the very end, that 25 minutes almost that it went without another kill. And Shinto opens it up, and look at that player damage there, 33,000 on this Tiamat. If you ever forgot just how much damage this god can do, Shinto gives you a perfect execution. Even without all of the kills that went through, I mean, before that second kill that even happened, 25, I mean, I looked over at the player damage charts, and it was like 4 players at 10,000, 12,000 plus, and everybody else at this tiny little narrow gap way behind there, like 3K, and Shinto was one of those 4 there. Picks and bans, game number 3. Let's not delay any longer and jump right in.
Man, Shinto got so much of that damage, but I think the majority of that damage was onto Benji. Every single time Benji used Descent into Madness, he was getting slammed by everything that Shinto had on repeat, man. And Shinto, given all that space by the rest of his team having a nice lead, was able to do exactly that going forward. But in a Game 3 situation, the Tartarus Titans will find themselves in the first pick position and ban out Terra immediately. I was concerned that maybe the Titans had found just the winning formula with these team drafts. Just the Aphrodite Cthulhu combo feels like it's so hard to deal with, but the Leviathans finally able to find that answer. We'll see if they're willing to put up with it again, though. I can't imagine it was fun for them.
And I think you may have been right there also with that Geb being such a big piece of that puzzle. Having this Kuzenbo, it gives you a level of aggression that Geb doesn't quite offer, but they didn't have that level of defense that the Geb can provide to them. Doesn't get taken away just yet. It will be Terra and Umoja by the Titans. Odin for the side of the Leviathans, and still 3 more bans to go. Geb being one of those, the Leviathans have at least taken one piece of the puzzle out of the equation that the Titans have been running through with these compositions. Curious to see if this Uller makes it through. It was the Titans in their 3rd ban that took it out in game number 2. With this RDO ban by the Titans, a nice little win there for Hardcore and the Leviathans on that god. And it will finally make it through. I think this is the first time, I want to even say almost this weekend, that we've actually got to see Uller make it through the first wave of bans.
Well, you better believe if the Titans don't take it here, it is very likely that we see the Leviathans pick that one up. So Ull is going to be locked in and does have some flex potential, especially with these new mace items, man. This guy can be just a mage for the squad, but I would hedge my bets on Cyclone Spin being the pilot of the Ull going forward. First look at him not on an assassin inside of this set, so I'm excited for it. I know Cyclone Spin is a very versatile player, and worth noting that the Tartarus Titans holistically don't have to go towards these Aphrodite-style compositions. These guys are very adept at playing just about any facet of Smite.
I honestly would not even be surprised this Uller somehow snuck its way over into the mid lane back on Paul. It was a god he really loved to play in the SPL, and even well before he jumped into the SPL back in his days in the SCC. It was the Ullers, the Freyas, the Habwas, gods that he loved, even the Hell back then. So I'm really curious where this Uller will fall in line. It will be Nike and Tiamat as a quick response from the Leviathans. Get a very staunch front line in that Nike, and then Tiamat for Shinto one more time. Can't complain about that.
Leviathans don't have as much flex potential with this Nike pick as some of these other teams. We do not often see Panatom take it, so I am going to say that it is likely headed for the short lane. But Shinto on the Tiamat, I've got chills. It did so much damage inside of the last one up against exactly what that gets locked in for the Tartarus Titans. Benji going to make a large target for himself when he descends into madness.
Currently 6 wins out of the 8 games that this god has made it in with that win record. Benji wants to put win number 7 on, but now with this Aphrodite locked in, that Uller is set to go the way of Cyclone Spin. Leviathans have one more pick before they go into the second wave of bans. Last time it was a Heimdall and a Tiamat. They got locked in along with their solo lane frontline. We'll see if Leviathans repeat it here in game number 3. A lot of frontline has been taken off the table, though. Multiple Guardians, the Odin, and most importantly, I think just this Morgan being taken away, so we don't see the potential of the double Cthulhu. Even the Leviathans don't want to take that one for themselves. Very curious to see where the Leviathans pit their final pick here.
With the Titans draft as it stands, Ull will operate very similarly to how Set did. It's a lot of aggression inside of the lane, a lot of 1v1 potential as well. So that should create some space for the Titans to kind of allocate the majority of their attention over inside of the long lane throughout the early game and allow these picks like Aphrodite, like Cthulhu to have the right foot stepping into the late game. So we'll see how that one does pan out for the Titans, as Heimdall is going to be the selection for the Leviathans this time around, and that's something that Zatman just absolutely loves. When his back is against the wall, it's always the Heimdall locked in. It's always that safety, as well as the chase down potential, the CC immunity inside of the dash, a phenomenal slow from the Gallarhorn. This draft from the Leviathans is looking scary, but the Titans got themselves some pretty good stuff as well.
Kick open the old reliable here for Zatman on the Heimdall. Next wave of bans starting up. Dodgy banned away by the Titans. Leviathans, they'll grab another Ares ban for themselves here in game number 2. I think Kepri might be the next potential for it, because that god has somehow been able to slip his way all the way to the latter half of the bans. It does leave things like the Sylvanas, like the Kuzenbo, even the Xing Chen, who's made his way into a couple of games just today alone. We've been able to see that Xing Chen. Curious where the remainder of these bans will go. It will be Kepri from the Leviathans. The Titans, they can take another shot at the jungle here, maybe try and maybe take this Gilgamesh away. Panatom's gotten to play 2 games with it, finally gotten his groove, gotten a little bit of comfort, but maybe not worth the ban there. Instead, that Susana will be the more of a priority.
I think that Susanoo makes a little bit more sense, for me at least. I mean, the ability to just close gap on a gods like Ull is going to be so nice, as well as the displacement factor inside of these team fights could really shake some stuff up, and it seems like that is exactly what the Tartarus Titans are concerned about. Displacement. Daji removed from the table, as is Susanoo, but what's left out there, it is going to be Serket locked in, and I do have to say that this one does have some flex potential. Could head over to support, could head over to the jungle, but with the Mace Tree changes, I think that Serket jungle is incredibly strong. But Rongyu just loves that pick.
It's something that Rongyu just loves doing, is grab this god and sit in that mid lane, just wait for the mid laner to step up and make one tiny little mistake, and they try and capitalize off that. But we saw what Johnny was able to do within the Valkyrie set. He went like 7-0-7 on this god, put in a lot of work for it, so we'll see exactly just where this god falls in place. Ganesh, not the god that I would have thought that Aurora would be jumping to here at the game number 3 for the Titans. Now all that's left here is to pick up the jungler for the Titans. Erlong Shen is still up. Maybe we see that Erlong is a final lock-in.
Ganesh has some phenomenal matchups here, man. I mean, up against what the Leviathans have already. Rend, a channeled ability, silence that one out. Serket's combo, oh, you're setting up the taunt. Maybe I silence you so you can't follow it up with the damage or your ultimate. And even Tiamat has to charge up that first ability to find the full value from it. If Ganesh is able to close gap there, able to stop that ability in its tracks. Not to mention how much protection it affords your team. When you're channeling that silence in a circle around you, very similar to Ares, you are giving your entire team protections. And let's not sleep on his ability to shred some of these objectives, man. Gold Furies, Pyromancers, especially with Ull's buff recently getting additional attack speed inside of the bow stance, is going to be strong. But on the other side, the Leviathans draft themselves some decent objective shred. Erlang Shen rounding out the draft.
Yeah, you better pray to the gods that you're not the one caught inside that Dharmic Pillars, because you can just be absolutely erased. But with the Camazotz out of the Tartarus Titans, that finally allows Panatom his chance to play this Erlong Shen that's been kept away from him the entirety of the set. So still in that warrior tree, going for similar style of a dive style warrior, but more of the auto attack centric than we see out of the Gilgamesh, who goes for a little bit more of those drop kicks. And then you drop down the winds and let the rest of your team start to kind of collapse in on the opposition. But having a Nike as a front line, and then with that Erlong Shen that does more so solidify the Serket going support.
I would agree with that, and now you've got some great early game prowess from the Leviathans, man. I mean, you can utilize that Erlang Shen and Serket together inside of the 3v3 to dive the backline very well. They've got great gap closing measures to make sure that Paul isn't feeling comfortable on this Aphrodite. You can trust your side lanes, Nike and Heimdall, to kind of play safe on their own, which really does open the door for the Leviathans to put a lot of their emphasis inside of that mid 3v3. I'm expecting a little bit of a slower pace to this game, as both teams do have some great late game scaling pieces, but if one of them is going to get involved earlier on, I think it's going to be dictated by the junglers. If Layers gets off to a hot start on this Camazotz, I think the rest of the team can rally behind him, but the same can be said of this Erlang Shen on the other side.
Yeah, this has just been a dangerous composition that the Titans have been able to put together to try and hold through here. Leviathans, they had an answer for this Cthulhu, for this Aphrodite last time. Is this what they've got for the answer in game number 3? Let's take it right down, close out our sets, and close out our day here with Dulcin and Gore.
We're also going to close out the weekend. One final game before we head into the final weekend of the, Gore, I guess what, standard SPL year next weekend. We'll go to group stages after that. Crazy, we've come a long way. We've got a little bit further to go here between the Titans and the Leviathans. And Gore, we are sticking with it. The Titans are hell-bent on making this composition work. You get a Cthulhu, an Aphrodite, and something else around it. And this time, instead of the Kuzubo, instead of the Geb, the Ganesh will be the pick for Aurora.
You go back to the Camazotz for Layers, though, so it's much more akin to the Game 1 composition.
Yep.
And it was kind of mentioned, first off, I think Cyclone's just gets a net upgrade. You get all of the same damage, maybe more damage, and you can do it from much further away than Set was able to do. So he's probably going to be feeling pretty good about having the Uller pick. But also Ganesh, Mifflin had mentioned it has some pretty interesting matchups onto the other side. Granted, his first few levels are not the best, so you can expect maybe a little bit of this. He also hasn't been as successful as you would expect, but I'm not going to count him out. I still think Dharmic Pillars is one of the best support abilities in the game, especially if you get a good connection on it. And on top of that, I think that Ganesh, with these matchups, with how many channeled abilities there are on the other side and how important that silence is going to be, has a lot of wiggle room to be a very impactful god this game.
I think we're going to find out pretty early. I mean, once you hit kind of that level 5 mark, I think we're going to get a pretty good idea of the pacing of this game. Worth looking back. Pace of game 2 quite slow. We had 1 kill like 20 minutes in. Both teams
If
happy.
you get the pace of game 2, Ganesh is ecstatic.
Right.
He just gets to go into a late game team fight. He loves that.
That's right. Rangi on the Circuit core I think is fun to watch as well. If you continue the conversation but flip the supports. Here's what I expect. Once Rangi get, level 5 maybe. And I imagine Paul and other mid laners in the league expect it. I imagine Rangyu's just going to be stealthed in mid lane for like 2 or 3 minutes of total time this game. And that's something production has tracked in the past because of how long Rangyu has spent sitting in stealth in mid lane at times. And it's just that type of pick that makes you think twice about where you're standing if you're in the mid lane. Aurora and Cyclone Spin might need to think twice about how they get out of this one. Aurora knocked up, but he dashes away. Is the shell enough? Panatom just needs a little bit more. Unreal that Aurora ends up surviving. And then Cyclone Spin is going to return some big damage onto Zapman. Won't choose to go back in. Already had some action early in this one, and somehow Aurora survives.
And realistically, it's just because they know there's going to be a little bit of an invade. He wants to save that mana, and it has regened quite a bit to be able to fight back. This red buff now with layers over here and speed buff around his belt should start going the way of the Titans. But I like the way the Leviathans play that. Even though they don't get the kill, it showcases what they have to offer early on and how much damage they can put out. That taunt from the Circuit is just so powerful in the right hands, and we've seen it several times for me to say that Rangyu's hands are the right hands. I want to continue seeing that level of aggression, that level of proactive play from them. Aurora's not going to get out of that every single time.
No.
That shell is all that saves his life.
Yep. So for 95 seconds, you maybe have return potential. It's Rangyu jumping onto Cyclone Spin instead, who will leap on away. Cyclone Spin's low on mana, but that's not all that unsurprising, Gore. We are used to seeing Uller early on in the game, lower on mana, but that tends to iron itself out a little bit later on, especially as Cyclone Spin ends up going Transcendence, able to stack that up. That'll help him there. Back to the Heimdall here for Zapman, Gore. And I think in the limited amount of data that we had on how it would look in Game 2, it did look good. Yarkor ganked by layers, leaps beneath the tower, and this one's easy. A lot of damage makes its way onto Yarkor. Hadn't been able to go back to base just yet. And that's an early kill for the Tartarus Titans.
And instantly, we have more impact out of layers in the first 20 minutes of this game. Well, I should say first 4 minutes of this game than we did in 20 minutes of the last game. That is what I think was severely lacking for the Titans.
I think you could also say 20 minutes, regardless of what he does for the next 20
good
minutes.
point. No matter what, the next 20 minutes, we've got way more of an impact. It's just something that I think is going to need to be there for them as a whole. They've got a lot of carries, but if you're going to put layers on something where maybe he's going to have to play setup, you got to have someone behind him where that setup means a lot more. And the only person they had last game was Cyclone Spin. I like Paul, and I like this Aphrodite that he's been playing, but Paul's Aphrodite isn't a hard carry. Aphrodite in general just isn't a hard carry. And so as of right now, you need something out of the jungle or something maybe a more heavy-handed from the duo lane to make that work consistently.
We continue to brawl over on the left side of the map. This time, Rangyu, the one who takes half of his HP. Level 5 for the Circuit. Ultimate gets used, so you have that small gap to open up the fighting there, but not a kill to be for Rangyu. Aurora will tick over to level 5 as we speak about it. So Dharmic Pillar's up and available now on the map. So wondering if Panatom was looking for a pin or something onto Benji, but no, the Greater Scorpion is going to spawn up here, so Panatom will take that one down. We talked about Layers Gore and the impact that he did or didn't have in Game 2. Panatom on the Erlong Jet's got to make an impact, and he's doing it here on the Layers. Bat out of hell gets used. Heal will be here shortly for Panatom. Is it enough, though? Is it enough to save his life from Benji? Half of his HP back in the health bar. And it looks like that healing was just enough to keep Panatom on the map.
I think if Panatom doesn't use that, it is much easier for Benji to rotate in and swing a big kill. And I like how aggressive they're playing. I mean, are you going to kill Hardcore around his blue buff? Probably not. But could you steal it and make him feel really, really awkward and take away some of that experience? Absolutely. And I think that's where their mindset is at. And seeing Benji, it's not often I feel like we get to see Cthulhu, making plays 6 minutes in, making plays 3 minutes in, 4 minutes in, things like that. And so Benji's being a lot more active. And admittedly, I think in a necessity for the team, they do have good late-game team fight. I do like what the Tartarus Titans are going to be able to hold on to as time goes on. I like the Leviathans a lot as well.
That's right. feel like the Leviathans, their ability to scale this game up. And it's a really interesting point, Gore, and actually a very good point that you bring up about Paul and Shinto here. It's a, it's a unique pick for Paul in the types of plays that you're going to be making on the Aphrodite are different from the types of plays that you'd be making on a Tiamat. Not, of course, their kit is different. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'll have some time to think about it, though. As Panatom gets the knock-up onto Benji, who immediately uses the ultimate. Wrong You is going to make his way onto this side of the map as well. And I think the Leviathans thought there was a lot quicker of a response coming from the rest of the Tartarus Titans, because they immediately turned around and headed on out. And Benji will just have his ultimate burn.
Depending on what kind of fights they're looking for, that's a big deal. Granted, you're on the right side of the map, and we are 3 minutes away from any of the big objectives spawning over there. So maybe not as big a deal as they would like. Luckily, they don't have to burn too much in order to get that ult. And so they do just make Benji feel a little more awkward, a little more susceptible to that damage that they can dish out. What I'm more interested in is Wrong Yu's pathing, as well as how deep some of these Titans were. Paul, Aurora, and Layers. They're going to be able to back away, and they're going to be fine doing it. But Wrong Yu, one good taunt from him into a taunt from Panatom, and just the damage numbers that we saw from Shinto and Zatman, there is definitely a lot of merits to giving a wide berth of space between yourselves and the Leviathans.
And I think that's a good segue back into the point I was making earlier about Paul versus Shinto, where it's so unique, because I'm certainly not slighting the draft that the Titans have gone for over the last few sets, because it's worked. I mean, they've won their sets. But it is a unique roll of the dice that you're taking, where you put Paul on something like a Tiamat, and he has the potential to match kind of what Shinto does there, put out massive damage numbers, 30,000 damage by the end of the game. The potential, Gore, to your point, looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
On something like the Aphrodite. You're making plays that help facilitate your front line, that help keep your team alive. Of course, get back Lovebirds, do some damage. But you are certainly saying, all right, well, we have Paul, one of the best in the world at these high damage, high output, high throughput mages, and we're going to put him on something a little bit different. And again, it has worked, and so I'm not trying to say that it doesn't look good for the Titans.
It just changes where his impact is, right? Like the healing numbers.
It's a different look.
And the survivability that he provides his team is incredibly important. But at the same time, especially last game. Like last game, in games where Layers has minimal impact or low impact, and Cyclonesman isn't able to pick up, typically that's where you get to see Paul get, his doubles and triples.
And I do, and maybe this is, maybe it's wild for me to say this, but like if I'm thinking you're getting towards Worlds, you're getting towards like these longer playoff events, best of fives, things like that. If Paul goes an entire set only playing Aphrodite, I have to feel like that's a missed opportunity, right?
Got something for you.
Yeah, I think
you could say no.
Well,
I just feel like
it is a yes and a no, because
Sure.
I think you're in a simultaneous, for this set, which actually, this set has a lot of standing implications for the Titans. It is weird for me to see them go back to the Aphrodite for the third game, except for the fact that they got the Kamazats. But at the same time, like you said, it's kind of showing your hand. Like, you're going to the group stages soon.
I think
people now all of a sudden are thinking of some various other... Then again, you can't really ban Paul out to begin with, so he adds another god to it.
It's such a hard position for me to defend because they've been winning with it, right? It's obviously a good pick for the Titans and for Paul. I just think the guy has the ability to pop out. You give him a Raijin, a Tiamat.
Well, you got to think about this, too. This is actually something
that's just a different comp, right? I mean, the argument against my point is just that, well, they're just playing a different comp, and that's totally
Here's
a valid
a fun,
point.
really big zoom-out thing, though.
Yeah, zoom us out, Core. Save me from whatever I'm dying on here.
8.10 will drop right before group stages. They're playing on the snow map with the lanterns, with all those balance changes. Once the regular, so they get, this week, this is the last game for this week. Next week we have the last 4 sets for the round robin portion. They get a week off. When they come back, they're going to be playing a different game. Essentially, maybe not as massively changing as like a season update, but it will not be the same thing that they are dealing with now. This might be the last time he gets to do the Aphrodite thing.
A lot of the teams in the league, Gore, would probably be happy if this is the last time they had to see Paul on Aphrodite, because we won't rehash that entire argument, but his impact.
But if you want to,
it's just
look.
It's a
1 kill in 11 minutes. We're on par for last game,
right,
baby.
We can chat. I just mean, what the other players then have to experience is not the ridiculous multi-kill damaging Paul. It's the
ridiculous.
He's obnoxious. His Undying Loves are perfect.
Yes.
His stuns are perfect. Right, that you're dealing with that Paul instead. So of course, it's just a different look. And if the rest of the league has to deal with that less.
And
less is the word I'm looking for. They'd be happier off for it. Pyromancer pulled here by the Titans.
Leashed.
Reset though. As the Leviathans show up, Yarkor will leap on away. How far is it reset? Titans get the Pyro in the back. Is Benji, who is taunted back in towards the Leviathans. It's unfortunate back timing from Hardcore if there's a fight breaking out. There is not. And the Pyromancer goes quietly.
And this is where the Titans are playing the Leviathans game from game 2. I mean, they have got a early objective, neutral objective in the Pyromancer.
They're going to
the
dive
only kill overall
here. No, they're just going blue buff.
Yeah, I think they are just playing the way that
I thought they were doing the good old-fashioned tier 1,
grab
tier
you right
2,
between the towers. Yeah, unfortunately, that's Nike. You maybe get the ult out of it. Actually, wouldn't have been a bad call maybe to try and pull that from Hardcore, but stealing away the blue buff and making him fall behind seems even better. And realistically, again, they're going for very similar playstyles to what we just saw the Leviathans do in Game 1. They're not big on fighting. They're not opposed to it. I think Layers opens up a lot more of the conversation and has been much more active this game than we saw the year-long Shin. And so that gives Paul a little more of an opportunity. Aurora as well has a little bit more setup that he's providing. And so it hasn't led to massive kills. They're at least looking for the fights this time, but still passively gaining a lot of that experience. I think this is one of the first times before a huge team fight or before a Gold Fury that the Titans have had a lead at all this set.
Yeah, the pace is similar, but the gold lead is flipped. How it was. Cyclone Spin, no good on the axe. Wrong-U is going to immediately head into the fight after that. Zapman walking on away from Layers here. Cyclone Spin finds some damage from range in the back. Bifrost out for Zapman. And as we've come to expect between these two teams this set, we find an engage, but no kills on the board.
This is a good position. You've got 4 people over here. I mean, at the minimum, you want Oracles. At best, you go for the Gold Fury. But look, Wrong-U and Zap didn't back off.
Gold Fury half HP. Panatom lurking. I don't even call it lurking. He's literally standing in front of the Tartarus Titans. Wrong-U is, however, lurking. Still has ultimate for Circuit around the back. Goes Wrong-U. Gold Fury low. Some damage weaved in by Shinto. Good taunt from Wrong-U. And then the follow-up from Hardcore is big, and the Nike spreads out. The Sentinel of Zeus to 3, the Tartarus Titans scattering, and the Leviathans find the opening kill.
Being able to pick off Aurora is a huge deal for them. Benji's ult is down as well. That's a huge teamfight priority. Stripped away from the Titans. I'll admit, a little surprised. I would have called, maybe if they had used a little less, pushing for the Gold Fury and at least maybe tempting some fate there. But I think the Leviathans are, again, making the smarter call, which is, let's not risk it. We got a good kill, and we've controlled this fight and made sure that things can go slightly in our favor. But they need a little more experience. You're starting to see some of these gaps crop up. There's 2 levels down for Hardcore, so he needs to be able to find some farm. Yeah. You have a level deficit here for Zap, a level deficit there for Wrong-U as well. Luckily, Shinto, this Tiamat's making up for most of that. But you are going to need a little bit more leverage for these fights if they're going to go even. That is just a really good taunt from Wrong-U in the backline with a good rotation from him. Otherwise, that looks like it's going to be a Titans objective at the minimum.
Yep. Well, good trend for the Leviathans, despite a little level gap in solo. And by little, I mean 2. There is a 2-level gap in mid for the Titans, against the Titans, if you want to word it that way. Shinto has found himself a decent little lead here. Stun from Paul onto Wrong-U. But he will waltz on away. Divine Ruin added in for Shinto, as you expect, up against Paul on this Aphrodite. Gold Fury gets pulled now by the Atlantis Leviathans, and it is quick, and it will not be answered by the Titans.
Yeah, not a single person from the Titans over here. By the time they start to look for a rotation, I think, and realize people are missing. Nothing to be said about it. Gold Fury goes down. That is a great way, but again, this is akin to Titans in Game 1. That just brings things to even. It doesn't really start to swing too much in favor of the Leviathans, despite the objective going their way. And so they have a little bit more work cut out for them, especially with team fights cropping up a little more often, at least little skirmishes, to make sure things go their way. Benji's super deep over on the right-hand side, and I think he's going to be one of the big impact players. But Cyclone Spin being ranged has already opened up more. We were 23 minutes in before a tower went down, almost 24 minutes in before a tower went down. The Titans just get 2, and I think that is the biggest difference that Cyclone Spin is going to be able to provide. A lot more easy, potent, tower-pushing capability, team fight capability, good self-peel. Ullr has admittedly a lot of things that you want in a god. And right now, Cyclone Spin gets to flex a lot of that.
Yeah, mainly being able to build the maze tree right now is one of the things that you want in a god, and Uller has that as well. The ebbs and flows of this game have been fun. One team gets a pyro, the other team grabs a tower, the other team gets a gold fury, then the other team gets another tower. You know, the gold has been kept largely in check just because these objectives are getting traded out without any real pushback one side or the other. Not quite as chaotic in the early XP charts here. A decent lead built up for the Tartarus Titans, as Gore had been mentioning just a moment ago. 1,000, though, in the gold department has been about as worse as it's been. Just over 1,500 were the Titans a little bit ago. I've been able to build that back up after losing just a little bit. Zapman and Rongi walking in towards Aurora. They'll try to split the Oracles. They will not be able to do so. And now it's the Pyro, where we did see Gore a little bit of fire last time. The Leviathans walked up and considered fighting up against it. Pin on out from Panatom. That's the only fire we got. Tartarus Titans take the Pyro.
Yeah, Panatom plays that in a way, especially his team plays that in a way of, if I steal it, that's pretty cool. If I don't, I'm not going to die. That is a big deal for the Erlong Shen. Slow rolling on the Leviathans. But this is a very similar comp, at least. So let's look at what is going to work out for them. Heimdall late game hits like a truck. Shinto hits like a truck.
Ow.
Add in the taunt, add in a second taunt.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, you've got pretty good setup for the Leviathan. So I think things, even though they've changed a little bit, are still just as deadly if we keep waiting for this. Plus, we talk about it, their 5-on-5 has been some of the best that we've seen in SMITE, just in general across the last 2 years. So you have to be very, very careful. Playing with the fire that the Titans are playing with. They are ready to touch a hot stove, and the Leviathans will burn them if necessary.
Is anyone ever ready to touch a hot stove?
Yeah, you can like mentally prep for it. Like I'm sure the guys that do Jackass are ready for it. It's the name of a movie, so I'm allowed to say that
You
on
are allowed to
broadcast.
say it. Congrats, Gore. You found a loophole.
Yeah, there we go.
You made your way. You made your way into it. You did it.
Legally, Hindu, you can't get mad at me right now.
Are those guys still? Are they still at it? It's like
they are no joke. They are releasing a new movie soon. I saw a preview for it at some point.
Well, you know,
maybe when we went to see Black Widow or something.
The nerve endings are probably MIA from their bodies.
I have
at this point,
sincere
right?
doubts that Steve-O can feel anything in his body.
That's right. Well, that was probably the first bit of pressure we saw Gore.
They're like 50. I don't know how you do. I don't want to do that. I hurt my foot playing pickleball. I don't want to get launched out of a cannon.
You did. Know who does want to get launched out of a? Never mind. It's that man. I was gonna say he wants to get fired into the sun with the amount of pressure he's receiving in his lane here, but the old Bifrost Crystallon out. We'll keep him right where he is, but it's still this mounting pressure from the Tartarus Titans. We're able to push Zapman back a little bit. You get another tower here in this game. So, of course, the kill pacing is almost the exact same as it was in Game 2. You're seeing a little bit quicker objective pacing on the map between the Pyros, the Fires, or the Pyros, the Furies. No fire yet. But then a couple of towers as well. One finally goes down in favor of the Leviathans. The right side tier 1 for the Titans just goes down. So that'll shrink that gold lead right back up to about 1,500. But we are getting to the point in the game, Gore. 20 minutes in. Fire Giant can be done quickly by one team or another. Certainly wouldn't help if you're the Titans if you lost Paul here, but that's what Hardcore has in mind. He jumps up and over. Makes layers uncomfortable. The kiss on the other end, as well as the Lovebirds. Taunt through from Panatom. Actually doesn't connect with much. Everyone on the Titans maintains their beats.
And I not only admire that, that is insane to be able to maintain, but you have to look at where the map state has been, right? Admittedly, neutral objectives, we've been talking a lot about the gold going back and forth between these two teams, and admittedly, it hasn't changed too much in the last few minutes, but they've knocked all the Tier 1 towers down. It's much easier for the Titans to get to a win state, win condition from here, and it seems like they have the exact same thing in mind.
If you don't want to just have this game taken away from you, if you're the Leviathans, you might have to step up.
Oh,
you
they
might
gotta
have
be
to get
careful.
something done. You might have to steal it away, but you're not able to do so. Panatom tried, but now Panatom jumping on Cyclone Spin with Hardcore. So the Uller out of the fight. Paul has gotten a kill elsewhere on the map. Nice stun from Cyclone Spin. Might allow him to escape, but the rest of the fight's going disastrously for the Leviathans. The Titans have lost no one, and they've gotten 2.
And now you leave Hardcore all alone between 4, like Aurora's the lowest person. At one good silence in a second is all it'll take.
Hardcore is going to be pinned in with 4. And Benji will be the one to grab the 4th kill of the game. 3 of them happening in this fight for the Tartarus Titans. And that's the risk that you play.
Yep.
When the game is slower paced, you're kind of hedging your bets on a late game fight. not only do you lose FG, but then you lose 3. You're going to lose a mid tier 2 tower. You're probably going to lose a Phoenix here.
You might.
You might lose.
I don't know. They've
Panatom's
got
at
all 5. You've got 5 seconds left. Nobody's
See what
here
they
to
do
defend
here.
it. Yeah, this is the safer call, right? Like, there's 2 calls to be made right there. There's one where you go in and are in a fight for your life under the Titan. Then there's another where you back off and you win this game by playing the map in terms of what you're going to be able to get. Pyromancer's going to be spawning pretty soon. Primal Fury is available, so that's going to be even more gold that can line the pockets of the Titans, but they got that tier 2, so they've got some gold already going for them. Cyclone Spin had to back already, so he's probably not going to be too worried about that. But the rest of his team, specifically Paul, as well as Layers, are going to be able to get some items that are going to be very helpful for them and set themselves up for victory. 2 more tier 2s, put some pressure on left where we just saw a wave pushed up. This is going to be a very easy setup to success play for the Tartarus Titans.
So it's pretty obvious for the Titans what the direction starts to look like here. Team map minions might say again.
The direction they want to go is win.
Is that a direction or is that an objective? The direction they want to go is forward.
True. True.
Which
North, technically, if you look at the map as like a compass rose.
You're absolutely right, Gore. They're headed north. That's where the star in the sky is leading the Tartarus Titans here. Leviathan's putting up a fight with the Pyromancer, but not with the Tartarus Titans just yet. What got you? What broke you?
Your reaction to that. You're right, Gore. Like, it was very teacher, very deliberate. Like, you didn't want to stifle my creativity, but you also wanted me to shut up.
No, never, Gore. Katie's in the green room right now.
That was a very Katie response. That's actually how she talks to me, no joke. Sometimes it is like I am like a 6-year-old being handled more than I am. How old am I? 28. Soon. I have like a month.
That's right. You got a little bit of time before we get there. The Leviathan's running out of time in game number 3. In goes Aurora. Down goes the Phoenix. Not yet, though.
Ooh, what a big ult.
Being looked at. Benji in the back. Look at it. All the space that he's controlling. This Cthulhu is literally massive in the back. Rongyu gets whittled down by Paul, who's got the opening kill here. Zapman ults back to base. The Tartarus Titans looking
they might just go
at
for
the
it.
Leviathans. Titan, and the damage is huge. This game has been asleep for 15 minutes, and it's really lit up in the last 8, and the Tartarus Titans walk in and take it.
And that is going to be one of the lowest kill counts in a game we've seen in the last 2 years. 6. 7 has been the magic number. 5 is the lowest ever. 6 is just hovering right around there. 6 is the lowest in the last 2 years that I can remember. Season 8, Season 7 at the minimum. So they're doing good work, I guess, there on the Titans. They get the kills that are important to them, and they get the Titan kill at the very end.
I guess if there's a composition where you're going to have a 6-kill game, it's an Aphrodite, Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's one, especially against what the Leviathans lock in, where they're like, all right, we're going to wait till 25 minutes and just see what happens.
And unfortunately, Gore, what happened is the Titans walked due north on the map and ended up winning the game pretty convincingly by the end of it. 2-1 for the Tartarus Titans, who end the win streak of the Atlantis Leviathans. The first loss of the phase for the Leviathans, and the Titans come up big. One final thought from you here, Gore?
Tie themselves up in the standings, I believe.
That's
as well,
right.
So make things really topsy-turvy up top.
And next weekend suddenly becomes all that much more important. The Titans get an all-important win here. We're going to head to a break. When we come back, the desk will break it down.
Escape from the
Oh, and welcome back to the desk one final time here on our third day of the SPL for week number 4. Tartarus Titans come out with another long-winded, much lower kill count game this time around, only ending the game with 6 total kills across the board, one of the lowest that we've had here in the SPL. But a big win for the Tartarus Titans. They dethrone the Atlantis Leviathans, so they don't get to make a full undefeated run in the first half of the phase. The Titans, with that win, get a nice little shake-up as far as the standings are concerned, but a big win out them here for in game number 3.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans, that strategy, man. These picks,
it's dirty.
These comps, it's so hard to deal with, but it is really fun to watch. They've come to a very unique conclusion to what the meta should look like. This Aphrodite-Cthulhu combo, it just works. That's the most simple way to put it. It seems like the plan is simple for the Titans. Let's pick these gods. Let's get to late game, and let's see how long we can hang in there, because nobody's going to be able to line up against us that long.
No, it's just a battle of patience at that point, is who is going to be the one to give out a little bit sooner. And this time it was the Leviathans who fall short in game number 3. Again, a low kill count game, but the Tartarus Titans, they just love it. They love this comp. Now they're running with it, and they've now found, after game number 2, the Kuzenbo didn't work out so well. They decided to instead slot the Ganesh in its place, and that one seemed to work out for them. So now you got a couple of different possibilities that you can run here, but Cyclone's been able to get that Uller, at least get a little bit of early presence in that dual lane. The first time that Uller does get let through this entire weekend, at least I know for all of today, the first time that Uller was able to slip through the picks and bans. Paul, I believe he ended his last line with a 2-0-2 on this Aphrodite. Sure, not a whole lot of damage you get from Aphrodite, but the amount of healing that he's able to provide to these frontliners, even to these backliners, able to make those dies, allowing this composition to really flourish.
Got to give some shout-outs to Benji as well. He had a tough time in lane in that there was a lot of players trying to focus him out, but couldn't really succeed in doing so. And you know what? I try to skirt the issue. I'm jealous of the young man, the handsome young gamer, the jungler of the Tartarus Titans. Not only puts an end to my own personal career, but now got to set him up and talk about him every single day in the SPL, playing for the playoff champions currently. Layers puts up some insane numbers on this Camazotz, dude. And you know what? I would rather throw to an interview than 2 layers. So, it's not me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not worthy of it. Let's let you do it, J-Mac. Who are we interviewing?
We're going to be interviewing Layers. Huh. But it's not going to be you or me interviewing him. It's actually going to be Dulcin standing by. Let's throw it right over to him so they can talk about it.
I don't know. Sounds like Miff would rather be standing over here. It's actually very funny that now we know every time who's getting interviewed, because Miff just goes on a tirade about how great the player is, because you're right here, Layers. Yep. And there's nothing else that he could say. I want to talk about the composition, though, that you guys have worked with the last couple days. It's been Cthulhu plus Morrigan, or Cthulhu plus Aphrodite, something along those lines, and it hadn't lost yet. The Leviathans had a bit of an answer here. What goes on in game 2 that they were able to deal with you guys a little bit better?
I go on in game 2.
That's what happened?
Yes, it was me versus myself in game 2, apparently.
Got it.
I absolutely spectated that game.
Hey,
I told them after the game, I was like, yo, guys, I did nothing. So, maybe if I do something, we win.
I wonder if – all right, so now I've seen some speculation. Erlang Shen. What's the take on Erlang Shen right now? People are saying it's the Ho Yi of jungle, or teams keep picking it for some reason and it's not doing well. You think Erlang Shen is in a good spot in the right scenario?
Yeah, I think if he gets ahead with that comp, he's really good. Because remember, we actually pulled out the Afro on one of our last scrims before this whole weekend, and we ran it with Erlang. And
right.
I was popping. I was 15-0 or something. We were just snowballing so hard. And then I came in today and I did absolutely nothing because we were even. So I was like, okay, now we know.
All right, maybe a little bit less.
Right.
We'll see. Maybe more Erlang Shen in the future. You guys have one final set left to play in the phase prior to group stages. Is the team focused on anything specific to work on, or are you just trying to iron out the little issues?
I think we've gotten a lot better,
yeah.
And we're still getting better. We still have some issues, like me on Erlang. That's definitely an issue. I got to stop doing it because I'm addicted for some reason. I was after the game, I'm addicted to this. I don't know why, but
what, playing Erlang Shen?
Yes, I can't help myself. I see it, I just start itching.
Maybe maybe Coach Oceans will adapt the picks and bans a little bit. Maybe no more Erlang Shen for the Titans. Layers, thanks for sitting down with me, standing up. Sorry, production, standing up with me. Congrats on the win. We'll go back to the desk though to round out the day.
Just gotta love the charisma coming out of this man, and maybe don't give him the Erlang Shen. He says he's addicted to it, been struggling a little bit, even if he's popping off in the scrims, not able to make it work so much in the battleground. But didn't need it this time around. They're able to take game number 3 and take the set. Tartarus Titans with a big win over the Atlantis Leviathans today, and that means we've only got One more week left of the SPL before we start closing out this first half of the phase, and then we start getting set up for group stages. Their next matchup is going to be against the Olympus Bolts. It's going to be a big, tough one for them.
Man, I don't know where this phase went, J-Mac. Feels like
It's just
I
gone.
woke up yesterday and it was like week 1. We're talking about how the Solar Scarabs are looking really good and on the rise, and now we're here yet again, and we're coming into the last week. It's been an absolute treat week in and week out, and what a great set to end this week with.
I mean, we've had a long weekend of SMITE matchups, a couple of 2-0s to start it out, but it's been nothing but game 3s ever since then. My Lord, it feels like we have been here for such a long time. The last couple of days have been very long ones. 2-0s for the Camelot Kings and the Leviathans to start our week out on Friday. Yesterday, we had a Tartarus Titans 2-1 win, an Olympus Bolts 2-1 win, and then today we had an Oni Warriors 2-1, and this time the Titans got another 2-1 win, this time over the Leviathans. They will dethrone them and remove them from that undefeated streak. Let's look at the standings now. And because of that win, the Tartarus Titans jump from that 2nd seed up to the 1st seed. Both of them still equally important because you do get to pick the other team's groups as we move towards that stage. But they still have to face off against the Olympus Bolts. So there is some potential here for the Bolts to play spoiler and maybe try and knock the Titans or the Leviathans out of that spot because with a win here in week number 5. Let's take a look at week number 5. Very important for everybody out there. This is only a 2-day weekend.
Oh, man.
We only got 4 sets of the SPL. I know, man. I was looking forward to another full weekend, but this time it is just going to be Saturday and Sunday. 4 sets to play. Kings and Valkyries, Bolts and Titans. That's going to be a big one there. Make sure you catch that. Dragons and the Oni Warriors, and the Leviathans and the Scarabs. Lots of big matchups. Just going off of how we've seen some of the land matchups, I assume that we'll be seeing a couple of those this weekend. Between those Bolts, Titans, for sure will be the land, and then Leviathan Scarabs will be land matches. So still a couple more of those to kind of round out our phase.
I'm keeping my eyes on that Bolts-Titans matchup, right? Because if the Bolts are able to take out the Titans, I think we can all agree that the Atlantis Leviathans are heavily favored over the Solar Scarabs. That could be one way to shake up those top 2 standings going forward. But as of now, I mean, this is still a pretty fun week to keep your eyes on. The Camelot Kings up against the Valkyries is one that I personally have got some stakes in. I'm really excited to see how the Valkyries are improving week in and week out. And the Jade Dragons, who have been slipping a little bit recently, well, maybe they got their work cut out for them against the Warriors.
Yeah, that's one thing is the Valkyries have now gotten 2 weeks in a row where they've gotten 3 game sets of some of these teams. We'll see how they can perform against some of the top 5s. And the Scarabs, they got 1 team left to try and take 2 or 3 game set. We'll see if they do it next week. But as for us, that's all for week number 4 of the SPL. On behalf of the Casters Production and everyone behind the scenes, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you all on Saturday, 1 p.m. for the final week of this half of Phase 3.